Head to congos.com/podcast to follow along with today's episode, and make sure you're subscribing on Apple Music, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you're listening.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Front Lounge with Congos. And today we have special guests, Fitness. They're a band comprised of Kenny Carkeet and Max Collins. Kenny's been in a few bands. Latest was AWOLNATION, who's had 10 million copies of their single sold worldwide. And then Max Collins was once in Eve 6, who had 3 top 40 hits, 8 modern rock hits, platinum albums, and now they're in the band Fitness. Welcome, guys.
Which is so much better than the other two bands combined.
It is true.
We do
I
say
didn't know that you
so
were that
ourselves.
successful. That's amazing.
Yeah, I did incredibly well.
You've done well for yourself.
I did incredibly well.
Yeah, welcome, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's this is you guys are actually our first musical guest.
Oh, wow. Who else? What other
No, that's not
types
true.
of
We had
acts?
Okay, sorry. You guys are our second.
Or Charlene.
So what did you guys have before? Like variety acts or
we've
something?
had our crew members, our friends, photographers.
Jugglers, yeah.
Did you guys do Mo yet?
Yeah, well,
That's awesome.
Mo did us.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
But this podcast is called the Front Lounge because of all the sort of late night conversations we'd have in the front lounge of the bus,
Yes,
and we're
yes.
like, hey, we should talk shit, and record it and put it out. So I mean, we're super happy to have you guys, and we want to get into all kinds of things music, but we also want to talk about things outside of music,
Of course.
and all the experiences that sort of link us in other ways. So maybe the easiest thing would be to start with how we know each other, how we met, and maybe Kenny, you start since we met first.
Oh man, wait. So talk about how we met?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Let's see. Congos and Kenny go back very far. We were just talking about this. What was it? 2012, 2012, January, something like that. We met.
2013, I think.
Was it 2013?
Yeah.
AWOLNATION, my old band, was doing a tour in the UK, and we toured with you guys, with the Congos, and it was incredible. And I remember...
You say toured with. You gave us an opening slot.
Yeah,
We had
Well,
fuck all
you gotta be
going
nice
on.
about it. Yeah. So these guys, we brought them out. They opened for us. I'll never forget too, because we can be real here. You do tours, and like sometimes you're not super pumped on the opening bands or whatever it is, and you don't really care. I remember that particular tour, we were all blown away with you guys, and Aaron, our singer, kept being like, you got to go check out this band, and you got to check out this song, I Want to Know. That you guys would play that, and so every night of that tour, we'd go and watch you guys play, and that was just the beginning of a beautiful relationship.
Well, go on, Kenny. Don't stop there.
So, moving on, I've been a fan of you guys for a long time.
Oh, stop, but also don't.
Oh, stop.
It is funny the amount of like random people that have liked I Want to Know.
Mm-hmm.
Like
That's
a former head of our label thought it was going to be the one,
Yeah.
and we went with it and flopped. It didn't click, at least in America.
It clicked here.
It clicks with audiences.
pointing
It's
to
just
my
weird
heart.
what people think is going to work. In like the world.
So through Kenny, we've met Max, and your new band that you guys have got going on. How did you two meet, and how long have you known each other, Max and Kenny?
Kenny and I met, it was 2012.
A lot of big years for me then.
What's that?
A lot of big years for me.
And Eve 6 and AWOL were on the same festival in Syracuse or Rochester. I always confuse the two, in upstate New York.
They're the same.
And it's the same thing. And we were wearing the same T-shirt. I think that's what kind of, we're wearing the same
What's the
T-shirt.
T-shirt?
It was an Old Dirty Bastard shirt.
Oh, nice.
And Kenny's like he's like, hey man, how's it going? Oh, you say something? Yeah, that's cool. Oh yeah, Public Enemy's about to go on. Let's go watch Public Enemy. So, I was like, oh, I like this boy. So we went and we watched Public Enemy side of stage, and we just kind of exchanged info. Both lived in LA. Both kind of wear different hats, and do songwriting things and production things for others. So that's what kind of, we met under those, or we started working together, doing the professional thing. And then it was like, I don't know, a couple years later that Kenny sent me, played me in the room, Get Dead, which would be the first Fitness song. And he'd started to make these tracks without, without any commercial expectation or attachment, but just to, kind of get off.
Like for music.
Yeah.
Music for music's sake.
Yeah, it was complete therapeutical exercise. I was writing a song a day for a different band or a different artist every day. And then, you have the A&R who's like, oh, it's not quite there. We don't quite have the single or whatever it is. And finally, after a few years, it was like, I just need to go in a room and close the door and make something with nobody else around and just for fun, just do that. And then Maxie came by one day and heard what I was working on. I was like, let me sing on it. And I was like, dude, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be for anything anyway. I said, fuck it, all right, go ahead and sing on it. And then, lo and behold, it's our first single.
Yeah.
That's how every great romance starts like that. Yeah.
But that's how a lot of good
key ingredients. Yeah.
a lot of good songs and a lot of good work starts that way, where you're not thinking about anything else. Like some of our best work, or at least even the stuff that's been commercially best, was shit that we were working in a little weird room, not thinking about things.
Yeah,
we were trying to write
world-changing songs that nobody's heard.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like ambition can kind of obscure that, pure creative thing. Sometimes it's like, you start to put things in a lane.
I just had just embedded in my brain the 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Don't bore us, get to the chorus. Got to have the middle eight here. Then you got to do the opening third chord. Like that structure that they're all looking for, right? And so, and I would be like, what if we don't have a chorus? What if we start with the pre-chorus? What if we do all the, something different? And then I was like, we don't normally do that, or, whatever it would be. And so finally I was just like, I just need to make something that I think is cool.
Well, eventually you also get kind of sick of hearing opinions from people. It's not to say that sometimes the business side of people, they have valid opinions, but sometimes they come to you and say, this section we've had a comment said, this section needs more music.
Right, yeah. Oh, yeah,
We're like, what?
No,
what the fuck does that mean?
The other day somebody said I needed to be a little more dangerous or something like that.
that coming from an A&R guy is just,
Yeah, exactly. It's
rich.
So that's where, essentially that's where fitness was born out of, was just we're hired to write songs for bands so that band can make the label money and yada, yada, yada. So it's just that wheel, which is fine, and we're so blessed to be able to do it, obviously. But yeah, at some point it was just like, I need to go do something.
So you guys were writing together for that.
Yeah, he and I.
Purpose.
So Max is incredible at top line, and I dabble a lot in the back and the track, vibe of it. And so it's just kind of a rad yin and yang thing. And so any session that I would get, I'd bring him on, and vice versa. And that's how we were able to do a song a day. Just busting out song a day.
I like how you described Kenny backstage. That is actually a memory I have of him, because a lot of times you play these festivals and there's 20 bands or of, and and most of the time no one hangs out and no one says hello to anyone, but Kenny is in everybody else's dressing room.
There was no pretense, there was no too cool. It was like, hey man, I really like man.
It was the same experience when on the AWOLNATION tour. That was one of our first kind of opening slots for a major band that had a crowd coming to see them, and we were kind of spoiled actually, because we had Dispatch right before you guys, and we toured for a few weeks in Europe, and they were just the coolest, nicest, most welcoming guys, and then you guys as well, and it was the same thing you said, no pretense, and then we followed up with a couple other bands where you're like, oh, we really were spoiled by those two bands.
Exactly.
Totally.
There's sometimes tours where I won't name names, but
oh, come on.
You won't even see, the headliner will never even see or speak to the direct support.
Yeah.
The entire
We've done
tour.
we've done some of those.
Yeah, totally.
We won't name any names, but we did a tour in a certain year, 2013. After that, or 2014, and they were fucking dicks.
Yeah,
totally. No other way to describe
man.
them.
It happens.
I will say also the flip side of that is we've done a lot of radio shows, festivals, these bills where a bunch of bands kind of randomly get thrown together, and the dress rooms are nearby, so everyone has the opportunity to mingle, but they don't usually take it. And there are some bands where you see the same guy in every dress room, and he's networking. It's you can tell it's networking,
exactly.
and it feels weird.
Sure.
Kenny's the opposite of that.
He is networking.
There's no
it's just
agenda.
He's all for some global weed business that he's
So I was the guy in AWOL. I won't forget this. We had a day off in Albuquerque, and we were parked in a Holiday Inn. There's nothing out there, and we're on the outskirts of Albuquerque. The only thing out there is a Home Depot. I said, hey, let's go shopping. So we went to the Home Depot. We got one of those pop-up tents, AstroTurf, rope lighting, American flags, barbecue, chairs. I made this whole set, and so we started playing a bunch of like summer festivals or something, and I kept popping up the whole set, and all the bands would come. We'd throw dice and stuff, and like, come on, man, let's have a good time. Everybody's like in their bus, just it's all freezing cold in their bus, and they're like just waiting to play, just looking out the window, making fun of people. You're like,
It's easy to see how you fall into that because the grind does eventually catch up to you.
And sometimes the prospect of like when you're on tour talking to someone that you don't know and that doesn't know you through and through just feels so extra exhausting. You know what I mean? When you're like in that grind and it's like, I just don't have the energy.
There's that flip side that I don't think a lot of people, appreciate, that like it is hard being on the road, and it is, a long path, and sometimes you just don't want to fucking talk to somebody. You just want to be in your bunk and be quiet, and like,
especially
and that's okay.
If you're on the road together, like say it's another band or a crew member or something, and you don't know them. It's always a risk, like, you strike up a conversation with this person, you become friends, and then like by the third day, you're like, oh, fuck, I wish I had not talked to this person. Now we're together for 6 weeks.
Totally.
Sleeping in bunk beds.
That's a common phenomenon I've noticed, is that people become friendly towards the end of the tour when there's
true.
That consequence doesn't exist.
Right, when there's the out.
Exactly.
It's like,
Exit
okay,
and then you
our
realize,
out has been stated for us.
Man, we could have been
Yeah.
great friends the whole tour,
time.
but that was too big of a risk.
Interesting, man. I've noticed that too.
So then also there's another funny story of how Max and I met was that we've been going to the same yoga class, or I joined this yoga class about a year ago, or a little less than a year ago, and I probably see you almost every day. Yeah,
Almost every day.
in Silver Lake, and I didn't put it together. I knew that Kenny was in a new band called Fitness. I went and I've seen a couple shows of his, and I just didn't put together because you're not really paying attention, or you're
not supposed to be.
You're not supposed to be
looking
paying
at the tip of your
attention.
nose the whole time. Yeah.
And so, but it started to I started to feel this, like, I know this guy. He looks so familiar. And then one day it just clicked. And it was one after the show we saw you guys in Hollywood. And I was like, oh. This is Max from Fitness. I've been doing yoga shirtless next to this guy for about 8 months.
Yeah, that's so funny. So you've been going for like a year, because I feel like... I guess there are times when I kind of don't go for whatever reason, if I'm traveling or whatever, for a couple months. I feel like I noticed you in the room like 6 months ago or something.
Yeah.
And then, just like a few weeks ago.
And you're both singers, and you both play bass, and you're both tall. You guys, this is weird, you guys.
Yeah. I mean,
What did you say about
Glitch in the Matrix.
his
Oh, right. And I
Rachel's
found out that your sister,
Yeah, Nina.
so his wife, Jesse's wife, Rachel, is a yoga teacher, and Nina was her teacher. And she'd been telling me, she's like, oh, is Nina in your class? Do you know Nina? You should meet Nina. And then I never put it together. I'm like, oh, then I had to go through Instagram and do detective work and find out that.
Think of all the missed connections you've had because Dylan doesn't put things together. He's still working at a restaurant with Bono.
Well, the thing is about this class is
I was going to say.
it's Mysore Ashtanga. So people arrive at different times. They leave at different times. They're doing the same sequence, or mostly the same sequence, but there's no teacher guiding it from start to finish. Right. So you come in and he's just adjusting you, or, guiding you in your practice. So you often just come in when someone's leaving. It's not like everyone arrives together and they get to chit-chat and then they leave and then they chit-chat. And so
Yeah,
And
and
really,
it's
stop somebody's yoga in the middle of it. You're not like, hey.
But it just makes it even weirder, because it's not. I mean, and in a way, I guess more likely, because it's not like a common type of yoga.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
and then to find Noah Williams too, it's like it's not like he's doing a bunch of self-advertising.
Max
so it's
gives
just
me
bizarre.
Right, yeah. You have to kind of seek him out to find the
Max gives me yoga lessons now.
Is that for real?
Oh yeah, in the dressing room sometimes he'll have me do the thing. He brings the mats and everything.
Kenny
we
needs
should
it so badly.
let's address the fact that this is going to be the most rock and roll podcast you've ever heard.
Next on the list is raw food.
Jokes aside, yoga is it's a lifesaver on tour, because
God.
To paint a little a picture is my favorite phrase, to paint a picture. A lot of times on the bus tour, you're sleeping in a bunk bed. The bus is
with a
moving.
mattress that's 2 inches thick.
Right.
Yeah.
The bus is moving, so you're having really bad sleep. If depending on the season, and the venues you're playing, there can be sometimes no chance to exercise or no real good way to exercise. You might be in an 8x8 dressing room, with beer on the floor.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
And then playing instruments doesn't help.
Yeah. Banging in the case of Kenny, banging your head really hard. So having something you can do to keep your body healthy in an 8x8 space.
Yeah.
your body and your mind. It's a lifesaver.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love seeing people with, the trailer is empty because all the gear's at the show, and then there's 2 people in the trailer doing their yoga in the shade in there. That's like,
Yoga in the trailer. I have yet to see
it's
that.
great. They just drop the trailer down and they get their little radio over there, and they're just doing it because it's in the shade.
It's
awesome.
funny. I don't know if you were there for Noah's. I think it was his last talk. He does talks like every once a month.
Yeah.
And he was, I love the way that he states things, like some pretty wild things with like absolute conviction. Mm-hmm. Like he told me once that like if you do a headstand, he said you're supposed to do a headstand with this point of your forehead touching the ground, not like most people do it here.
Yeah.
Because if you do, you'll go insane. I was just like unblinking. But no, he was like, yeah, never practice outside. You don't want to practice outside.
Yeah.
It's awful for you. It's awful for prana. You're going to it's like that kind of thing. And I've spent like so many summer tours out of necessity, practicing outside in the shade or whatever. And love it.
I've come across that idea as well. And it's an interesting, it's hard to, all the ideas are kind of hard to just immediately accept. Some of them resonate with you, and some of them make a lot more sense than others. But then when you experience something that has been said that sounds outlandish, and it just sounds like some mysterious tradition,
but you know it on the level of experience, and then it's different. Yeah,
it becomes completely different. Yeah.
Let's come back to this we have a section called Deep Thoughts at the end, because I think. We could talk about what you said about the pressure on a certain part of your head making you go insane, and I think that there's some new science that we could talk about that might actually bring some validity to that.
Interesting.
Point. So that's a little tidbit teaser for the next hour.
All right, so but before we move on to kind of the music only section, you guys obviously aren't only in a band; you have personal lives. We have a little section kind of breaking news, like what everyone's been up to on a personal level too. So you recently got your pilot's license, Kenny?
I did. I got my pilot's license a little over a year ago, which was one of the hardest things I've ever done, one of the best things I've ever done. It's like straight up going back to college and learning about weather and physics and all that stuff. But now I can just go rent a plane and fly anywhere, and it's amazing. And I took Maxie here on a flight. Ooh, I like whatever that is. I took Maxie here on a flight. We left Camarillo and went to the Mojave Desert in the middle of. There's this little airport I know of in the middle of nowhere. As far as you can look in every direction, it's just
Arizona,
sand. Right? Yeah, should be, but no. It's in the Mojave.
Up towards Vegas almost.
Right, kind of like out that way and a little bit north. And then there's this little airport in the middle of nowhere that has these amazing burgers, and they're called the $100 hamburger because the plane's expensive to rent. So you go, hey, let's go get a $100 hamburger.
It is. But when you told me how, a $100 hamburger is expensive, but $100 to get in an airplane and fly it to
over
to
the
rent
mountain,
a plane,
over Lake
that's
Castaic,
insanely cheap.
Over Lake Castaic, and down into the valley.
So we need to talk off the air about our Escape LA apocalypse scenario.
Listen, you want to know why I got my
it's like a collective.
The first appearance of a zombie, I'm fucking out of here, dude. I'm out of here. I'm in a plane. I'm gone. I'm going to an island, and you guys.
How do we buy into this program?
Well, we'll talk after the show.
So let me quickly talk about my experience flying with Kenny, because it was, my wife was not stoked about me going up in a little airplane on Kenny's third flight ever. And I was like, this is just something I have to do. This is it's like a brotherly, feat of strength thing or something. And we got there to the airport, and I was a little bit nervous, but we get there and they give him this manual, what looks like a book of, I assumed directions on how to fly this particular airplane.
Which it's not.
He's taking a half hour to read this book and touch certain things on the plane. It's okay, there's this. It's and I started to get deeply, deeply concerned, but didn't want to say it. And, but I realized afterwards it's a checklist, and even the most experienced pilot has to do it. But I thought he was literally reading a manual on how to fly this plane.
Right. I didn't realize that until after the flight was already over. We were had left for the day. That even airline pilots, private pilots in jets, 40,000 feet in the air, they're all checklists. Everything is a checklist. That way you don't miss anything. It's by law, FAA. You have to read out every line and do. Gear, check, fuel selector, check, both, check, max, check. Everything you have to do one by one, like a flow. And so it hit me that after I was like, I bet he thought I was like reading the manual of like how to fly this goddamn airplane. And I was like, oh no.
So did he fly? Did he know how to fly it?
He was great. There were two more harrowing moments. The first was when he told me to, put my hands on the wheel or two, you call them wheels or
yoke.
On the yoke. He's like, put your hands on the yoke. I feel like I would have remembered if you called it yoke.
A stick maybe. Yeah.
And he was like, okay, it's your plane. And I was like, holy shit. I'm flying this airplane. He's like, yeah, move your hands down and the plane goes up, right?
Yeah.
Up and the plane goes down and I'm flying. He's like, follow that freeway. And, that was a trip. And then the most harrowing was on the way back when we went straight up. It was a hot day. And on hot days, you're technically, it takes a little bit longer.
Yeah. So like on it's a starter airplane, which it's meant to be beat up and all that stuff because it's a starter airplane, but it's also not meant to fly very heavy with a lot of passengers and fuel on a very hot day. We had 3 passengers and lots of fuel, and it was a very hot day. And we took off out of the Mojave Desert off of General William Fox Field. And there's a bunch of mountains in front of us.
Yeah.
And the mountains are like 5,000 feet, and we're already at 3,000, so we have to climb 2,000. So I'm like, okay, we can make this. If I have to do a circle, you can do a circle to get up to altitude to go over the mountains. But I was like, we'll be fine. I'm just gonna pull it back a little more and push the throttle in a little more, and I think that will be fine. We did make that. The other crazy part,
I started to see him get a little nervous though.
Yeah, there was,
and he was like scanning, what you're supposed to do also.
Right.
Scanning for emergency landing spots.
Yeah, I saw
like
him looking
around.
all outside the airplane. At one point, I thought we were hovering because the wind was so strong.
You're basically like, I was all ready to get in the plane with you. Now it's like every minute that passes, I'm less likely
to keep everybody like really, confident about the flight. But really, I'm like,
the truth is, it was fine. It was just
right.
like,
It was totally fine. The last thing that wasn't fine. Well, it was fine.
Your door not being
which is
closed.
not a crazy thing as it sounds, but my door wasn't closed all the way. I had my seatbelt on.
Isn't that like the final check? Is your door?
Right. Well, no. See, okay, it was a very old
I like to wear a
airplane.
parachute
It was a very
all the
old
time.
airplane. The door was closed and the door was locked. So I thought I checked, and then we were at 4,000 feet, and I was like, man, my door's kind of open, man.
He's doing the thing you do in the car. Is like
trying to swing the door a little bit, but you have to actually open it to close it.
What's the size of the plane? How many passengers?
It's a 4-seater Cessna 172. You can go you could get to Vegas in an hour and a half or something like that from LA.
So just give us a breakdown of so assuming you get your license, you go through all the training, because you were telling us about this last time we saw you at one of these shows, and you're like, yeah, it's $150, including Uber or rental car.
Right. So the planes that I'm renting now, it's $130 an hour, including fuel, and that's only for when the plane is on. So if you fly, I would fly to Palm Springs, which takes 30 minutes. Which is incredible. You land, they give you a rental car for free. You give them the airplane keys, and the terminal gives you a brand new Nissan Altima. You go down the street, you get a burger, you come back. You're not charged any of that time for the airplane because the airplane's not on, and so you fly back. So that trip ends up costing you $100 to fly back and forth. Right, and I wish we could go for our shows all the time, but I can barely keep any weight in it, so we can't put a guitar in it or drums or anything.
It's like Iron Maiden, right? That dude flies.
Right.
That's
He's got the
full-on
big jets.
jet,
And so does Dexter Hollander here. Yeah. And so
our assistant tour manager, he had his pilot's license as well.
Yeah.
And he's got similar crazy stories.
What was the one he said they used to take big bags of flour and they'd be out in the desert in Arizona and they'd pick a particular area and try and bomb that area with the bags of flour, and whoever gets
toilet
close.
paper. They would throw toilet paper and then they'd try to cut the toilet paper as many times as they could on the way down.
Totally. That dude, the pilot world's a crazy one. And that's why the door thing it sounds crazy, but it's not that crazy because these planes are so slow. You can open the window while you're flying, and it's completely fine. You're just like, oh, I'm hot. You open the window of a fucking airplane. So when the door wasn't closed, it's not that big. I know it looks bad, but it'll be okay.
I know this looks bad.
Yeah, I know this looks strange, but
I had never been able to look forward.
Right.
Well, that's the strangest experience is looking. Into the great beyond and just going toward it.
I've flown
it's
out
nuts.
to Catalina and stuff for the day. You fly out to Catalina, land, and there's a restaurant at the airport at the top that has great bison burgers, and a $100 bison burger, and you go over there and you get that one.
This all started with a burger obsession.
It all starts with a burger, and most of these airport restaurants have something on the menu called the $100 hamburger. It's just an aviation thing, apparently. Yeah, so if you see it, now you'll know.
What's the range of that size of a plane? How far could you go?
There's so many factors between weight, winds, heat, and all that kind of stuff. But like, you could get, I don't know, you could probably get like 7-hour flight straight. I don't know how many miles that would be exactly, but it'd be farther than Vegas from LA, which is normally 4.5 hours by car.
How many zombie antidotes can you fit in?
Many. But if you think I'm taking antidotes in my plane, you're out of your mind. I'm taking me and my dogs, my wife, and
I was waiting for that one.
I want her there, and Maxie and his family. The crazy thing is, though, with this, so my license, I'm allowed to fly single-engine propeller airplanes. Those actually get fairly big, up to like 30 passengers. I have to go up with the teacher and learn that airplane, but technically I'm allowed to learn and fly these big, huge. As long as it's got one propeller engine, I can fly it.
All right. Well,
Crazy, man.
That you could fit gear on.
Good to.
what have you? Sorry, not to. It's gonna be hard to follow up. Airplane.
What have you done with your
door
life,
close.
Max?
Yeah. What have you done with your life recently, Max?
Well, yeah. I have two little girls, a 4-year-old and a 14-month-old girl.
Wow.
So a lot of parenting.
So no time to
That's
learn
a
how to
60-week-old baby.
fly a plane.
Yeah,
I have my first 1-year-old. She's coming up on her first birthday.
No
So,
way.
yeah.
Oh,
I'm
that's
sure we
awesome.
can relate on diapers and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, big time. Oh, congrats, man.
Thank you. Yeah, you too.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a full time. If you're not on tour or if you're not out,
This is with
Oh, yeah.
Max's kid today. I just go there and she just sits on my lap and she's the cutest thing, just eating her fingers and stuff.
Have you done a whole lot of touring since you've had both kids?
I've done a considerable amount since having the 4-year-old. With Zia, not so much. Probably the longest thing was the thing we just did, like 2 weeks with fitness. But it's hard. But FaceTime, I mean, like I can't imagine pre-FaceTime touring with kids.
Yeah, can you imagine that? You ever watch those movies that kind of talk about two people's like romance or whatever, or they're being away from their family, and it's like 10 years or 6 years that they're writing letters to each other?
I always
think
think
wait
like
6 months in between letters. It's like
you literally
just
wouldn't
brutal.
remember what they looked like.
Yeah,
Your
totally.
entire existence now, you can always see what someone looks like.
I
Yeah.
FaceTime Max once a day. It's amazing, just like, hey, what's going on?
You know how to block, right, Max?
So you have 3 kids.
Have you flown with your kids? Because for my breaking news, I flew with my wife back to Charlotte to visit some of her family. And on a flight back, there was this family with 4 or 5 kids, 2 of them with triplets or 3 triplets, or like just a lot of young, similarly aged kids.
Yeah.
And I've never in my life seen such little shits.
Yeah.
And I don't even blame the kids because
Yeah.
they were young. They were 6 or 8 at most.
Yeah.
And the parents were there sitting on their like 5th or 6th vodka.
Yeah.
Nice.
The dad
There you have
literally
it.
didn't even acknowledge that the kids were sitting behind him. He was just like had his head down,
Yeah.
pretending
He was
they were
doing
other
that.
people's kids.
Yeah.
kicking the back of my seat, like like out of a fucking Thanksgiving movie.
Right.
They came over and said, like, we're going to be writing up a report. Like, you're not going to be able to fly again.
Wow.
The fucking floor was covered in food.
Oh, wow, it was
They were
that
just
bad that the
throwing
airline
shit
was
there.
like-
Wow.
The funniest thing that killed me at the end was the mother was like, I don't know, I just picture her living in Beverly Hills and
Right.
like,
Yeah.
my nanny usually deals with
exactly.
this.
Yes.
Like,
Oh, totally.
she starts telling the oldest kid, whatever his name was, Tyler or something like that.
Yeah.
Of course.
If you don't be quiet, I'm going to fine you $25.
Oh,
and
God.
What?
And he literally says to her out loud, and the whole plane now is listening. He goes, I don't care, Mom. What? So she's like, all right, 26. He's like, I don't care, Mom. This is not fair. She got up to $45 before she like realized that this wasn't going to
Does
work
he
with
make a
this.
salary? Like, I don't understand. Or is
It's like,
this
fuck you, bitch.
God, I get like $5.
Well, you know what? It's like it's a cliche, but follow through. Like a friend of mine who had his kids, or his oldest is like 8 years old, and he told me that too. And it's just like, yeah, you can't do the empty threat thing because they call your bluff and you're in it.
Psychological
I
warfare.
don't have any
It kinda
kids.
is.
I don't have any kids, but
Yeah.
as far as I can tell, Maxie's
Speaking
kids,
of
Maxie's
kids.
kids are incredible. I know, right?
Well,
Still
the
the sticker
sticker's
on
still on me.
them. His kids are so well behaved. They're awesome.
Yeah, no, they're
Weird of fining like it's a corporation.
it's transactional.
Like, is he
Yeah.
making a salary? I don't
I don't-
understand.
yeah, yeah.
If you can take $25 away from him How much money does he have?
Right,
How much are you paying him?
We're adjusting your payroll.
Yeah. I mean,
Listen,
we used to
I'm
have
cutting
a
your
quarter in the swear
401k.
jar. You know what I mean? Like a quarter in the swear jar.
Yeah.
$25. That'd be my yearly.
Also in the world of credit cards and now all finance is moving to your phone, it's in the cloud
Yeah, of
somewhere.
course.
Like
Yeah,
no one
yeah.
has actual money.
Yeah.
If you're not physically parting with money, and a kid, it's very hard for him to sort of identify.
Abstraction, right?
He was
It means
probably-
nothing.
It's like your Bitcoin has been removed.
Right, yeah.
Fuck you, Mom. I bought Bitcoin at 400.
Yeah, exactly. At 400, now it's at 401. Wolf of Wall Street, what's up? That's awesome.
All right, so should we move on to just talking about music?
Music.
So here we basically just talk about music you've been listening to, some new band, artist, whatever you've come across. The one we were going to talk about this week, and we can get to think of whoever you want to talk about, is this old South African dude called Mahlatini. I think I'm pronouncing that
Love
correctly. And he's an album called Lion of Soweto. And it's just, we've talked about Maskandi music, which is this South African specific style of music, but this is kind of, he's like the OG of this shit. And it sounds almost like a blend between 60s jazz, American style jazz, and now what South Africans would have done with that. And we'll throw a link up to this album. I'll send it to you guys afterwards to listen to. But I just came across this album of his. We'd known his stuff, and he had a lot of more modern stuff, but this is one of the original old albums. It sounds
Soweto,
it's
like the
recorded
ghetto
in-
Soweto?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
it's a-
Soweto.
Been there. Crazy.
Oh yeah, you guys toured South Africa.
One of the coolest places I've ever been in my whole life.
Yeah.
So Soweto stands for Southwestern Township, which is during
didn't know that.
during apartheid, the racist, oppressive government at the time pushed groups of native people basically into townships, and they separated them based on some arbitrary tribes. Not totally arbitrary, but they even tried to. It was like the divide and conquer, type of strategy where they put in Soweto. There's all sorts of tribes that now exist and coexist there.
What I
It's
saw
one
was
of the biggest-
crazy, man. We went into Nelson Mandela's house, and the only rule from the tour manager was do not separate, do not leave, don't go walk off on your own. It's the only rule. Within 3 seconds, our guitar player was missing, gone. Went flea market shopping somewhere down the road. It took forever to find him, and everybody was freaking out.
It's pretty amazing to go back. I mean, every year we go to South Africa, we often go down to just visit Nelson Mandela's house. And there's also like a street that's popped up there called Vilakazi Street. And every year, I mean, you see poverty in in Africa that you just don't see anywhere else.
Not.
I mean, with the exception of India.
What I saw,
I'm saying
I'd
in
never
America,
seen,
you don't see
I'd never
it.
seen metal shacks with dirt floors and a fire in the middle of it for a mile, as far as you can see in every direction.
But it is encouraging because every year we go back there, there does seem to be some improvement.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's going to be a long time
of course,
to,
but that's
to
awesome.
rectify. But
and this is what's actually very interesting about the music and that album, Lion of Soweto, and all of that Maskani music, is that when you see the conditions that they've been forced to live in under oppressive governments, very often no running water. It's the happiest music you'll ever hear in your life. It's like it's on par with some of that Bob Marley, reggae stuff. That
I was going to say
how that type of joy came out in that music under those conditions.
I wonder if it's because the music was one of the biggest sources of joy.
or escape.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Alpha Blondie, is that his name? I want to say South African
It's Alpha Blondie.
reggae artist who I came across recently, and he's so fucking good.
Oh, I've not heard of it. We'll have to check
I want to
him
say
out.
early 80s. I think it's Alpha Blondie. Break the Neck of This Apartheid is like the album.
We'll throw a link up.
Yeah, throw a link
It's
up to that and
really,
check it out.
really cool.
Okay, South African music. Die Antwoord, love or hate?
I love them.
Love.
Yeah, I like them.
Same. They're the best.
They're hilarious. I mean, the last favorite thing of mine was Ninja's Kanye West's Kanye West.
the
story
Kanye
on
West
Vice.
videos?
Yeah,
That was
funny, dude.
incredible. That was one of the best. Yeah.
Artistic, incredible creations. What I remember, like hearing Fish Paste, or seeing the video for Fish Paste, like their first single, so long ago. And one of my director buddies was like, "This is gonna be huge. They're gonna be sick." And we're all like, "What?"
Yeah.
Your
I
mean, it's
masa
dope,
puss in a
but, like,
fish paste jar.
Exactly. And we were like, I mean, I love it, but how could this possibly get big? And then it did.
It's funny that South Africans have a weird relationship with them. Like they're bigger in the rest of the world than they are in South Africa.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people in South Africa feel like they're creating the wrong impression of South Africans because they're these fucking fucking maniacs,
Yeah,
or at
totally.
least their characters are maniacs. So people think like that's how we think of South Africans, which I think people do that.
You guys remind me of Antwoord.
I was going to say,
the
do
polite
they
version.
Do they perceive them as like appropriating the culture? But like, I guess musically,
there's multiple arguments. Yeah. There's definitely that because they did take a lot of their imagery from like Cape Town cultures and stuff like that. So there's that argument, which is that they've stolen imagery and stuff, and then there's also like the conservative aspect of South Africa who think like, oh, these they're representing us wrongly, and so
Sure, yeah.
But there was a photographer, I think Roger Ballon,
yeah.
who did a lot of their videos. And if you go back and look in the 80s, he was kind of making Antwoord videos in the 80s that weren't videos. They were just like filming local scenes.
It's some of the scariest shit.
Yeah, just super
so
weird.
is he sort of the Malcolm McLaren kind of like
Who's he?
brain of the aesthetic, the Sex Pistols?
Yeah, definitely the Sex Pistols guy, right?
Yeah.
Malcolm McLaren, like just was very much responsible for the image of the Sex Pistols.
Yes,
yeah, definitely their entire
and
look.
Ninja works with him.
The creative energy behind that group. I mean, just musically, visually, lyrically, melodic. I mean, so many different ways. You're just like, my mind's going to explode from the amount of stuff you're throwing at it right now.
There's a sort of ballsiness in it that
Yeah.
can only come from repeated failure.
Yeah.
You know? And
Yes.
if you look at his story and Ninja's story and their history of like how they, he's a fucking good rapper and he's been trying for however
long
long to
time,
make it in so many different projects.
Yeah.
And the Antwoord in Afrikaans means the answer.
Yeah.
And from what I read, like that was his moment. It was like, what the fuck is the answer?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And he comes up with this thing, this like entity, that is so different from anything
because
else.
that's even the accents that they're using are not the way they.
That's not the way they normally speak.
He
Yeah.
went to a private school, like
Yeah.
probably sipping
Is that
tea,
part
wearing a
of the-
uniform.
Is that part of the grudge from South Africans? That
No,
they're like,
they thought they were. It's been an evolving grudge, I think, because initially they thought they were real. And
Right.
they fell for the trick,
Right.
And it was I don't know. I don't know.
Because from the outside and not knowing much of their story, to me, it looks like they're from the ghettos of South Africa.
Right,
They were raised in the poverty, and they're coming up and making their way. But to learn things like going to private schools, like, are they?
And
doing
an
that
analogy
8 miles?
could
more like performance artists,
like a loose analogy could be, take some culture that exists in America that's lower class, like difficult situation. People say like, I don't know, the deep south or something, or now some private school kid comes and like he starts dressing like them,
Totally.
talking like them.
That's what I'm
He
curious
makes
about,
music
yeah.
that's sort of ironically about their culture.
Right.
Those people might get pissed off.
Yeah, totally.
But they're not. I don't think it's
think
not
they
the
get
Zef
the-
culture, like which is basically a lot of the poor white ghettos in
Right.
South Africa that have occurred since the new South Africa, because there's been a real
Right.
shift
but also
around.
Cape,
And,
I don't even think Zef comes from.
I
them.
don't think that those are the people necessarily that have the problem with him. It's like the weird, almost like yuppie South Africans
yeah.
feel like, oh, this isn't, but we're not like this. We're very cosmopolitan and like,
Right.
we drink wine and coffee and like.
When
we're
I
not
went
like
to
this.
Cape Town, I was like, "Is this Malibu? This
Yeah,
is what
no,
it
it's-
looks like. It looks like
Which is
Malibu.
weird because everyone always goes to Cape Town. It's beautiful,
Right.
but it doesn't actually feel like Africa.
Right? No, not at all.
If you go to Johannesburg,
Right, which is
that's where
we
you're like,
started,
okay, this is
right.
a real
I was like,
city.
holy shit, I am far from home right now.
Have you guys seen the Jim and Andy documentary?
Yeah.
No.
Yes, yeah.
Not yet. Don't spoil it.
Okay. I don't think I'm spoiling when I talk about his epiphany, where it was like a sleepless night, and then he just got this like cosmic message. Like, what do people want? They want freedom from concern.
Yeah.
And like Antwoord, it's like I try to channel that in our own little way with fitness. It's like kind of taking that on as a mantra, where like you're putting aside everything else but that thing. I don't know how, but that, which is like rock and roll to me.
Yeah, that was interesting what he said about it, which was like, he was trying to come up with his act. He was trying to discover what it is that he could do uniquely as a comic, and because at that time the comedians were just blowing up.
Right.
Yeah, and he's like, what do they need and what are they here for? And then that epiphany, I think, led to something really unique, and that's
You can feel that
a
in
little bit like what the Antwoord does.
Yeah.
A microcosm, like people excel in the world just if they have that quality about them. If they can psychologically lift the burden from people's shoulders around them.
Yes, there's a generosity
they're a magnet,
to it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think this is a good transition into our music business section, because for this week I wanted to talk about the trappings of having success, because we know through your history with Eve 6 you've had massive success that I'm sure you experienced then trying to follow up what that does to you psychologically. And that what you're saying about that documentary about Andy Kaufman, there's a feeling that we felt, and tell me if you had a similar thing, that when we had our hit, now we weren't able to create this environment of not having concern, because we became concerned about following up or maintaining that hit, and it just created an environment where perhaps on our next thing it was being perceived by the audience as like, well, they're not in a comfortable space. Like subconsciously, like obviously we're always putting on our good Instagram face,
of course,
but can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think in some respects you've seen what we've gone through on a much bigger scale of being in a major label situation, hits, success, all that sort of thing, and then dealing with the aftermath of that.
Yeah, it's like, it's funny. It's like, in like biblical terms, it's like a false idol. It's like you make this thing important, and you give it the tremendous value, and it starts to become an impediment to the reason why you had it in the first place. You know what I mean? Yeah, for me, I remember, I was like so young when my band broke. Like I had no foresight. There was nothing, I don't know. We weren't trying to write a hit. We weren't, I was 17 years old when I wrote the song that would be like the biggest Eve 6 song. And
it's crazy.
It's crazy. So, yeah, I definitely remember. It was a crazy time in so many ways. But yeah, for me, I remember putting the second record out. The first song we put out, I think I had this shameful expectation that it was just going to immediately do the same thing. Like just shoot up to number one. Why wouldn't it? The other one did. And it didn't. And the song did okay, but like when we ended up, the third single from that record ended up doing well. It didn't even go to rock radio, but it was a pop hit. And then the record after that was like, that's when I knew, like, okay, commercially this thing is on the way down. We're on the way down from whatever that ride was. But I don't know. I had to like, kind of gather myself in so many ways after that third record. It was like I sort of needed to, the band broke up. I needed to like get sober. Sorry, I'm going all the tangents now. I
want to hear about all of it.
But yeah, it took me a long time to sort of find my way again. And yeah, thinking back on that time, I'm like, man, I wish I'd had like a mentor, like someone who'd sort of been chewed up and spit out, or not, or was able to maintain, who could kind of offer some advice, like the shit that you think is really important isn't really, like, follow your inspiration, stay, find joy in music, like don't lose that. And I definitely did lose it.
I think it's funny to say you wish you'd had a mentor, because what's funny is we did have a mentor. Our dad was in the business, had a meteoric rise with 2 hit songs in London. He kind of had done literally everything we had done before, and gave us all the fatherly and outside of being a father, music business,
of wisdom.
Gave us all the words of wisdom. We'd grown up with that. It's almost like we had to learn it ourselves.
Yeah.
And
right, sure. I say that, but
call
it's
him up, like 2 years later, like, you know what, Dad, we're just going to get back to like making music for us, and we're not going to be worried about what's going to be the next single, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yes.
Yeah.
That's what I've been telling you.
Right.
But, even having a mentor, which obviously we were lucky to have had, you still had to learn a lot of it ourselves.
You're absolutely right. And I think apply that to anything else. Like, be wary of drugs and alcohol. Sure.
Was there a moment or like a sequence of events or some, did you feel like there was a bottom or something where you had an aha moment, in your sort of personal way and with your relationship with music?
It got to a place with Eve 6 where I just knew I had to just break away because I didn't identify with the sound, didn't identify with the band, and was just personally in a place where I didn't know who I was, I think is basically kind of where I was at after that third Eve 6 record, and kind of broke the band up. Had a moment where I was just like, if I don't get sober and kind of like get right, like the trajectory of my life is not going to be, pretty. So like that's what I became my primary focus. And, I basically stopped working. I had the luxury of being able to do that, and, made sobriety kind of my main, point of like focus for a few years there.
Can you talk a little bit about how, and obviously like what you can talk about, how it went in terms of the label's involvement in that? Because I was reading today, like Wikipediaing that last album, it said the third or fourth album only sold 196 or 200,000 copies. I was like, it's like, first of all, it's amazing that that's considered a bad sales when you're like, you'd kill someone to sell 100,000 records these days. But how did that go? If you can talk about that,
for sure,
with the label.
Well, we also made some like really kind of foolish decisions with that record and spent a ton of money on it and had like 4 people mix it who were like A-list mixers. I mean, just like really, really stupid stuff. So, I mean, I think it was just, the classic story of like our team that had been there and had broken the band had pretty much all been fired. New president, Clive Davis, came in, and, the bean counters counted and we're like, they spent this much, they sold this much, the song peaked at number 8, and we got dropped.
Well, it is that mechanical.
It's that mechanical.
They're called mechanicals for a reason.
It's that artless and cold, and
Well, Kenny, what in your musical career, because you've done a lot of shit. Most people know you probably for AWOLNATION, but we've been over to your studio and seen the amount of bands you work with and the songs you've written and that sort of thing. What, in terms of the music business, was there a moment that sort of changed your trajectory, or changed what you want, where you wanted to put your focus, and how that led you to start fitness with Max?
Man, my journey's a weird one, and it's a very fortunate one because I moved to LA like 10 years ago with I went to college for engineering, but I didn't know anybody out here. It's like I tested video games at Activision. I did all this stupid shit. Ended up getting a job at a recording studio with this guy, Jimmy Messer, a producer. He played guitar for like Kelly Clarkson and Enrique Iglesias and wrote like a lot of those big songs and stuff. It was there that I met Aaron Bruno. And I was engineering, and I had this whole life planned out that I want to engineer. I'm going to engineer records. I'm going to do this whole thing. I love gear, yada, yada, yada. And then Aaron started making some music with Jimmy, which would end up being like All I Need, Guilty, Filthy Soul, and Burn It Down, I think were the 3 that they did. And then Aaron wanted to play a show, and he's like, hey, can he play keyboards for us or whatever? I'd never played keyboards in a band before. And then I did that. Aaron and I wrote Sail together, and people were like, that's the single, put it out. We put a band together with only 4 songs, got signed with only 4 songs, and it was just that fast how everything happened. So like that experience looking back is so weird because it was so fast that I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. I was here one day, and then I was here the next day, and the next thing I know, I'm in Europe and I'm playing with you guys and all this weird stuff. It was just going so fast, and then
sorry to interrupt you, but that, I think you guys were like the prime example of what happens to a lot of bands, and it happened to us as well. When we finally kind of got our hit, we fucking chased that song around the world, and we didn't do it as long as you guys. You guys
toured 4 years on that single. What was crazy is that it did well at Alternative for like 2.5 years, kicked ass, and then it jumped to pop. Then it jumped to top 40, which was mind-boggling for all of us. I like to say mind-boggling. For all of us.
Like your mind is in a bottle.
Exactly, yeah. You know what I mean. I actually think that's from Step Brothers, too. Anyways, then it jumped to pop. And so now we're doing festivals with like Miley Cyrus and these other weird things, which we didn't obviously fit at all. So that only lasted a little while. But it charted on 2 different territories. And so that's why that ended up being 4 years.
I remember when BBC One added it.
Yeah.
And it was like... It was 3-4 years after it came out. It sold millions of copies. And they're like, okay, we'll fucking play it.
Exactly,
it's like
dude.
incredible.
They drug it on. The industry drug it out, which we were lucky to have.
The English are so behind the times sometimes that they are ahead of the times.
Totally.
Because they can play hipster by being like 6 years late on a song.
What's funny? You guys are talking about like, having that expectation after having a hit, and like Sail was absolutely that same situation. And, I remember Aaron getting, because he is the main writer and writes pretty much all the stuff. And like, I remember after that, people kept asking him, what's the next sale? What are you going to do? What are you, do you have the next sale? It was always, do you have the next sale? And he's like, no, I don't. I have the next single. I don't have, there will never be another sale because that was that. Yeah. And he got into a pretty dark place and like, moved up north into this cabin on the ocean because he was going to try to write music there and clear his head, but couldn't really get anything done. And then almost overnight, I saw him click, and he just let himself go and started making things that he thought were great. And then that's how he came up with Run and all those songs on Run and stuff like that. And he released all that bad energy.
The crazy, totally counterintuitive thing that it is like on a song like that gets that big, like for the career of the band. Like, would it have been better to cut that touring time in half to sort of put manufacture a ceiling on the song so that it doesn't get to a point where it's literally an insurmountable.
Well, that's the thing is that even songs on Run were top 10 alternative, but it's weird that is pale in comparison to what Sail did. You're like top 10. Well, I think it was like 2 or 3 songs on Run that were top 10 alternative. You're like, that's incredible.
The Weeknd did that, I think, on a pop scale. On a huge scale. He canceled an opening slot with Rihanna to go back in the studio, and that's very intelligent.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of whoever is involved in that, I'm sure he understands those pitfalls.
It's an interesting way to run all that stuff, and
I'm sure you guys we can all relate on some level. You know, like on a bigger scale for you guys, but it gets to a point where it's hard to say no to an offer, or it's hard to say like,
of course,
so and so is going to start to play it, so we need to go there. It's like
completely
retarded for these pop festivals. Play these Vegas pop festivals, and they're like, hell yeah, we'll go there for that money, no problem. We got 2 buses, both sliders, and semi truck, all this stuff.
It would take an incredible, almost inhuman amount of like wisdom and willpower.
And again, that was just so fast, man. None of us knew what was happening. I don't even think Aaron at the same time. Like it just grew and grew and grew and grew so fast.
On the business side, I find it very funny. They're kind of their sphere of understanding is so small. They'll be like, this sale was a total anomaly. This weird track, really, it's a weird song. Now it's normal to us all now, but it's a very unusual song.
Very
that
unusual
crossed to
song.
pop.
That we wrote.
Like, do that
it doesn't
anomaly
have
again.
A chorus.
That Aaron and I wrote in 4 hours. Funny
Right.
story. The label goes, you guys should write a chorus on there. We're like, what do you mean write a chorus? And they're like, that is the chorus, Sale. And he's like, no, you guys got to try. I don't even remember it, but Aaron and I went and did a chorus. He sang a whole different chorus on it, like singing with melodies and stuff. I gotta find it, dude. It's somewhere. And the song actually used to be called Afghani Sale, because we were smoking Afghani Kush weed when we wrote it, and we were going to keep Afghani Sale. I still have it on my phone. Like it pops up every once in a while, called Afghani Sale, like Rough 101 or whatever. And then finally the label's like, you got to drop Afghani on it. We can't put that out like that. But man, it's crazy. Then fast forward,
and then you change the name to Durban Poison.
The alternate universe where Afghani Sale comes out and is a total stiff.
Right, totally.
Can you imagine though, like some guy's fucking arbitrary opinion, a pencil pusher, now removes that massive life change. How many people's lives did it change?
It changed everybody, an entire.
And how often does that and has that happen by someone who needs to justify their own existence?
It changed our life because we ended up opening.
But that's some of the hard pressure about having a single go that big as we all have had. We're like, okay, now you're responsible for this many people, kind of. We're like, you guys really helped out and paid a lot of people.
You're a job creator.
Right, totally. And so now you've got like these 12 people you got to take care of. These 5 band members, these 7 crew members, the label, the publicist, all these people who are banking on your next one, and that's why they're asking, "Where's the next sale? Where's the next sale?" And you're like,
and then they start to form opinions about things that they have no experience or understanding of,
and a willingness to die on those hills, like
you know, and then you guys
put their identities, wrapped up in those opinions.
They get used to those paychecks from those royalty checks and those paychecks coming in from syncs.
That's still coming, and it's pretty awesome.
Are you guys on a label?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're on Epic Sony.
Cool.
And they're the anomaly. They're different from every other label.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Well, they are different in the fact that they don't really know we exist. I mean, we're it's a pop and hip hop label. There's not much else going on in the rock or alternative, which has worked to our advantage.
That's
because
cool.
They leave us alone. We make the music
that's
we
awesome.
want.
That's cool.
That's amazing. So you guys were talking about like the moment of like reconstructing your life almost, and that was for me, it was a little over a year ago when I left AWOL, which was like I had done, I think it was almost 9 years in that band, played every late night TV show, almost every continent, every festival, everything. And, we toured forever. We did 275 shows a year for almost like 8 years straight. Just booking hard, right? And so we finished up the second tour cycle for Run, and it was just like, man, if I was ever going to do anything else with my life besides, where it sounds bad or not, if I was going to do anything else with my life besides play somebody else's music, it has to be now. I was about to turn 33. I'd done this for 8 years. I was like, I need to do something. And fitness had just kind of started, and he and I were starting to take it seriously. And so all these kind of stars aligned, and it was like incredibly terrifying and scary and eye-opening to be like, all right, I'm going to put this whole world, this only world that I've known for 8 years, completely behind me, and I'm going to try to do this thing on my own and see what happens.
Yeah, getting back to that question and sort of the catalyst for finding that creative like impetus again in like a real way was honestly starting to like make music with Kenny for fitness and something. It's like I had done like a not produced at all little acoustic solo record. Just to kind of do it, songs that I'd had that were sort of piling up. But like, starting to work with Kenny and his like just weirdness and his energy and like I found my voice, or I found a voice. The next like sort of incarnation of what I am, I guess.
You guys were also saying that it was the energy on the other side of it was trying to like promote it. You were saying how much fun you were having, just like tweeting a radio station saying, "Hey, play our song," or getting people involved that you kind of take for granted once that stuff starts rolling with momentum.
You guys were saying, completely. For years, we've all made all these friends along the way. We've all these radio DJs, all these promoters, whatever, people you become friends with. And so when we started fitness, we're like, well, let's start cashing in some of these coupons. They're like, hey, dude, what happened? We paid money for like a radio campaign that did okay, yada, yada, yada. And then Max and I are like, what? I know Ross Mahoney in Vegas. We know Andy Herron in Nashville. Let me text these guys.
It's weird. We learned this quite quickly, that there's all these gatekeepers.
Yes.
Which is, it's necessary. You can't have everyone just texting DJ saying play this song, but and you did, I'm sure,
right?
All have done we call them the radio hand job shows, where you just go around and you're doing favors for radio stations
before a venue,
so that you can, your spin counts go up or whatever it is, and
it's like more subtle sort of payola.
Totally,
totally.
Every time we play a show in any city that morning at 10 a.m., we do a radio performance.
But the interesting thing now is like it is. With the middleman situation with like these radio promo companies, like this one that we paid a few $1,000s to push the song to like specialty shows and stuff like that. And at some point it occurred to us, like, hang on a second, we can direct message these program directors and say, hi, this is Kenny from AWOLNATION, Max from Eve 6. We have a new thing. Here's the song. And like we instantly started to get results, that we hadn't with the other thing. So it's,
from K-Rock to Alt Nation to a bunch of these stations across the country, they're just like friends who are like, it's cool to see that there are still DJs who will stick their neck out for music that they like and they believe in, because there are, and we all know them, DJs who like to be courted and taken out to dinner by these companies that bands and labels pay $30,000 to get the single on. There's still that, but there are these fucking incredible people who love music, who actually love music.
And
they
more
don't
often
love
than
being
not,
the DJ; they love the fucking music.
More often than not, those are the DJs that are actually pulling the new hits out, because they're the ones willing to take a risk.
The people
and
who
not
played Sail. Fucking Toby Ryan in Austin was like the first one to play Sail.
I think for us it was Nerf, and
See?
then the guys,
Yeah.
in
Denver.
Chicago.
That's
Love
the thing
Nerf,
is we
man.
all
I've
know-
known Nerf for God, 15 years now or something. And he was always one of those who was willing to be like, oh, I like the song. I don't care who else is playing it. I'm going to bang it.
We all know the
He's very
names
fair.
of
He'll
the
say
DJ.
if he doesn't like something. He doesn't.
Absolutely.
We all know the names of the DJs who took a chance on our bands. And that's amazing. That's an incredible part of the music industry that still exists in some way that you can find,
Yeah, for us, it was like, the fact that we started this band, I don't even know if we would have called it that in the beginning. It was like this project where we're making music. He's sending me tracks from tour. I'm putting lyric and melodies on it. To a year and a half later, we have some like legitimate, radio stations playing the song in regular rotation. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. And we like, without a label, without anything else, in a small, a micro sort of way, but enough that it's like validation to, make another record that we think is great and do what we can to get it out there.
That is a weird phenomenon. It's not going to, even if the format of radio dies because of the internet, the idea of filtering or a person selecting music, I don't think is going to go away, because there's a sense of security that the public has in
in the personality.
And also in sharing. If you had to go search through an endless list of music and decide what you liked, you'd find you have far fewer opinions. When somebody suggests something, you're suggestible.
Yeah,
completely.
You're open because of this person.
You say that because internet radio is getting massive, and it's funny that we talk about, because it holds currency, these stations that people know about, but we've had a lot of success with internet radio stations, with people who found our music via Twitter, whatever the fuck it is, loved our songs, put us on there, and now we're in the top 10 of like a decent sized internet radio station with AWOLNATION, which is weird. So it's like these internet radio stations are starting to grab hold and be worth something, and it's cool to see other people find it.
Before any commercial stations, there was a guy called Beef Vegan. You've probably met him. He's a non-com that was in Phoenix, and he was a real radio personality. So he developed this almost cult-like following in the city, because he was the only guy who played what he wanted.
That's awesome.
Same thing,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's the same reason that people are like, computer programs are going to be able to write songs that are just as good as but it's like, the thing that makes a song appealing and allows it to touch me is the fact that there's a human being who like suffers, you know what I mean, who made it. Like I need that. Right. It's similar with a curator who's giving you their like, these are his picks, this human being who also suffers.
So maybe that's linked. Maybe that the idea that AI can do something, maybe it's linked to suffering. Maybe there are a lot of analogies have been drawn. That Ex Machina movie was good. It was related to suffering. I think that's a very good point.
I think we're just going to have to put the computers in a dungeon and make them suffer to write
just flagellate the things.
Unplug their
That's
cords
how they
from
made the
time
new
to time.
Taylor Swift album.
Right.
Torturing a robot.
That kind
Even
That's exactly
Torturing the Robot. Is that our EP title?
it might be. Did they just name our EP?
I'm all into. I've been trying to come up with a conspiracy about Mutt Lange. I think he's actually a robot designer. Because he's such a successful. And AC/DC were the only robots that he never. They're the only non-robots. Sorry.
Right. Mutt Lange is the producer of.
Yeah, he's like one of the biggest producers ever.
Our good friend Matthew Coma just produced the new Shania Twain record.
Oh, really?
And I actually played bass on it.
Oh, no way! That's insane.
Jeez. Yeah.
That story is so crazy. Like, let's see. So he and Shania were together, and then they
wife
swapped.
swapped.
They swapped with who? Like his or her assistant or something like that.
I can't remember who.
They weren't even on a TV show. Like they weren't being filmed for this, and they did the whole wife swap thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it was her best friend.
Okay.
It was
That's the way it usually
and then
is.
and so then Mutt Lange had an affair with that whoever that was, and then it was like a TV show. Yeah,
I was watching that George Harrison documentary, Living in the Material World.
So
and
good.
Eric Clapton and George Harrison.
Yes.
Swapped.
And George was like, I'm totally cool with it. Like he was like, I love Eric Clapton. Like, right?
I think
Wasn't
they
that
got
kind
to
of
that
his
point
thing?
later in life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
That's one of the best music documentaries I've seen recently.
So good.
It's on Netflix. Definitely worth checking out. It's made by Martin Scorsese, so it's kind of next level music doc.
Oh yeah, this just quickly go back to like an old episode of the podcast where we talked about that John Coltrane documentary. I finally watched it and I turned it off. It was a pile of shit.
Wow.
Because I don't know, it just seemed like a bunch of people talking about Coltrane that didn't understand why they should be talking about it. And then I flicked onto the George Harrison documentary, which I'd seen before, but I was like, I just want to watch it again.
Yeah.
And the difference when you see that documentary is there's such a depth of understanding of the filmmakers of that.
Anytime a documentary picks like a renowned critic and then surrounds them with books and they kind of sit there and they ponder about this
Red
artist,
flag.
like, it's fucking annoying. They always do that. Whenever they interview their people who worked with them or anybody who's not a professional criticizer for their life, that you get a much more real view of it.
I got to be honest, as soon as I see Dave Grohl, I turn it off. I just can't.
But he's so sincere.
I just can't.
You know what I actually liked, which I don't know if I'm embarrassed to like, or maybe I'm not embarrassed at all. Defiant Ones.
Oh yeah, it was awesome. It was a one
I thought
big
it was
Apple
great.
ad.
I had
It was
a
amazing.
great
Yeah.
time.
Oh,
watching all
yeah,
that stuff, man.
I didn't see. I did hear the Apple ad criticism.
It's not even a criticism. I mean, it's like they're trying to be billionaires, so they got their own ambitions, and it's
not
amazing.
Even, and the Apple ad's not even that. It's like the one
it's-
scene at the very end. Like it's not even that
Right,
thing. The
yeah.
whole.
I don't even care.
The whole
Like,
thing
I-
about Jimmy's upbringing in his career. That was absolutely fucking
I didn't
mind-blowing.
realize the engineering background.
Yeah, exactly. And dating Stevie Nicks and like all this different shit. You're like, dude, you were doing Tom Petty's records and like all these things. You're like,
I just
dude,
drool. I also drool when I see Dr. Dre's studio or like
Right,
his
I know.
SSL. You know,
I
it's
know,
like-
dude. That thing's so nice. And they
What
use,
is
like,
it? Is
two
it a
channels on
9000? Or is it a...
They use like 2 channels at a time. Tops.
Yeah.
So, you're like, oh my god.
No, it's not true. Like it's all real stuff.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
drum mics.
You get what I'm saying, though.
I think the good thing about both of those documentaries is they chose a theme, basically, or a characteristic, a personality trait that both of Dre and Jimmy had, and then also with George Harrison, is that was almost more of the focus than the music. It was the fact that through a whole bunch of bullshit and, murky waters and everything, they pushed through.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's called the Defiant Ones for a reason.
No, yeah,
but
totally.
that's what pulls you in. It's
way
not
Jimmy-
you
the
don't even have to be
narrative-
interested in
narrative.
music.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And then the people who back him up are people that I don't know, but I fully trust them. You know what I mean? Like Springsteen and Petty and them all being like, dude, Jimmy did this, Jimmy did that. I'm like, I love him.
Yeah.
Immediately. I'm like,
There is a growing list of people who are on the list to be in your dog. Bono's one of them. Dave Grohl's the other one. They're in everything. They just are always talking about everything all the time.
Soon we're going to be like that. We're just going to be...
That's what we do. We talk
My
now.
final thought on the Defiant Ones was that, I had sort of an idea of what I thought Jimmy Iovine was, just based because like the first time I'd actually seen him talk was on American Idol or something,
Right.
and and it was kind of a glossy, false thing that was constructed for him to give his opinion.
Right.
Then you see his history and
Right.
what he's actually done, the work he's done, and the fact that he's one of those guys who will use whatever tactic necessary to get his artist what they need, or to kind of go to bat for his artist, and you appreciate that. You appreciate that, even if he's doing shady shit or whatever. Who cares? Like he's got
it's
his
the
artist.
Irving Azoff thing. It's there. The Eagles said he's the devil, but he's our devil. You know?
Yeah, right. That's a great
I
quote.
love when he says like to Gwen Stefani that in 6 years you're going to be superstars. Like, so 6 years to the date, she put out Holla Back Girl.
Man, I have a weird Jimmy Iovine story. Actually.
Let's hear it.
Like, this would have been in like 2009, I want to say. Of the 2000s.
Right.
I had this song, and a friend of mine who was at Interscope, he was like Ron Fair's assistant, heard the song and thought it was really good and played it for Ron, and Ron was like, Puddle of Mud is making a record, and they want to go to Hot AC, and like this needs to be their song. It was like, it was that weird enough. And then And so he had us come into the studio or go to the to Interscope, and he's like, Jimmy wants to hear the song. So we went into Jimmy's office, which is like like a lair kind of. It's like really kind of creepy in there. And his handshake was like this is the handshake. It's just like total death fish. And he played the song like so loud that like my ears were ringing afterwards. Like listen to the entire song, kind of we said like that. And he's like, yeah, it's great. Put his voice on it. And me and the co-writer of the song like produced the singer of Puddle of Mud singing this song, and it became a single. It was just very, very weird.
It went through.
It happened.
I'm gonna check out that song. That's
it's
a cool
awful.
story.
It's a terrible song. I cringe when I even say the title. It was a weird phase for me.
Now that's going to top off the story. You have to tell us the name of this song now.
We don't have to look back now. It's a terrible title, awful song.
It's a great title.
Terrible, it's really bad.
We have a bunch of Puddle of Mud's
it's funny to reminisce
cases.
about that.
Really?
title.
Yeah, we got them secondhand from that guy down by LAX.
The gear storage guy. The guy's got this.
They were giving them away.
Well, let's move on. We have a section called Member Berries. Have you guys seen the South Park?
Yes. Oh yeah, I have. He might not have, but I have.
It's
South
Member
Park
Berries.
reference.
It's like
remember the Tauntauns? Remember the Ewoks?
People who they eat these little berries and it just puts them in nostalgia land, and all they do, and it's like making fun of the fact that no movies or new movies are all remakes, and everybody just puts nostalgic memes and shit like that.
Right.
So I'll start it off. My memory of Kenny is we were during that tour, and they had an end of tour party in Trafalgar Square at some fancy restaurant.
That sounds about right.
And that's the last time I drank Jack Daniels because we were drinking wine and then Jack Daniels, and it just got out of control.
And it was a Red Bull because AWOL was Red Bull on Red Bull Records, so they were sponsoring it. So there was Red Bull was like keeping everyone going and then continuing to mix the alcohol.
This is back when I drank. And I was so fucking hammered. I remember that. I'll forget. It was me and Thomas left that bar, and we got into a taxi, and we went to a McDonald's, and we had the guy wait outside, and then it took forever inside the McDonald's, but he still waited for us. Then we went back to the hotel. Yeah, I remember that. That was a good night.
We had to drive up to Birmingham for the gig the next day. It was a pre-end of tour party.
Right.
And I remember having to get out of the van, and I just
Is this
had to,
Birmingham, Alabama, or Birmingham?
No, UK. So it's probably a common occurrance for them to see me because I
Similar
jumped.
places, kind of.
Yeah. I jumped out of the van and there was this soccer team practicing, and I threw up, like with everyone just watching, like they're running around being healthy. I get out of the van.
Sounds like an A.
Well, that is every night though in certain towns in the UK.
This is true.
Kenny, you mentioned Thomas. You're talking about Thomas Pridgeon, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that tour, it was us, AWOLNATION, and then the other opening band was a band called Itch. It was like a UK sort of hip-hop dude, and he had hired a band. The drummer was Thomas Pridgeon, who was the drummer from Mars Volta. He's like on Modern Drummer all the time, one of the best drummers I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And so every night we would kind of meet. I remember bumping into you watching Thomas from side stage because he's one of those maniacs on the drum set. He's got like massive dreads. A lot of times he would just wear like a waistcoat and jeans.
If you want to see somebody have pure fun playing their instrument, watch Thomas Pridgeon. It's all smiles, having the best time, and it makes you have the best time.
Yeah.
There's no anger in his playing. It's all joy.
No, there's aggression, not anger.
Right, exactly. Like this weird thing. It's just so much fun to watch him play drums, man. It's incredible.
That's my member barrier, Kenny.
My member barrier is him saying like, I'm just a hired gun all the time about that band because he wanted to separate himself. He was just like, I'm Thomas Pridgeon, all right? This is
exactly. Yeah.
Remember me? I don't play for. I play for. Yeah, I mean, and he like dropped like, when I was on the Beyonce tour or whatever.
Right.
My member is that same party. Is that it was a strange experience because it was the first time we saw like what labels do.
Right.
They throw parties and stuff, and they want to be seen as being able to afford things. And
Those
obviously,
Red Bull tables.
you were riding the wave of sale,
Exactly,
and you guys had a magician.
Did we?
What?
The label hired a magician.
That's
to
like
walk
a
around.
Spinal Tap moment right there.
I remember that.
He was like
I remember that guy.
He was actually incredible. He was like he stole our our
social security number.
Our booking agent was there with him, and no one believes this story when they think like someone can steal your watch off your hand without you knowing it. And our booking agent was standing next to us, and he was doing card tricks. And then before he left, he's like, "Oh yeah, you might want your watch back."
Oh my
He gave
God.
his watch back to our booking
I
agent.
Dude, that's
that
amazing.
magician, dude. Okay, my member berry. It's actually it'll be from that tour, but it'll be about Itch. I'll never fucking forget going onto their tour bus. Did you guys go on their bus at all?
No, but it was like Fast Times at Ridgemont High. It was every time they opened the door. It was. I've never seen smoke that.
You've never seen that much weed smoke and that much fucking trash with a broken toilet. We walked upstairs into the European buses. Everybody listening, they're 2-story buses where all the bunks are up top and there's a lounge up top in the front and a lounge in the bottom. So we were walking into their bus, which was there's like piss everywhere and the toilet was broken. There's trash everywhere. And we walk upstairs and we go up into their top lounge and there's like 7 people in there all smoking cigarettes with no window. There's no window. You can't open windows in there. Some are smoking weed. Some are smoking cigarettes. There's fucking trash everywhere. Oh my God, that was the most disgusting thing I've ever been in my entire life.
How did you keep so both of you guys, when you were doing your hard bus touring, how were your buses generally? Like, did you have neat buses or were you on dirty buses?
Our buses were pretty clean. We're all pretty clean freaks. Like, we would all take turns vacuuming and like trying to keep everything clean. Once we did well enough that we had a band bus and a crew bus. Oh man, we had like candles over here and like little Christmas lights over here. Like, we took it seriously, man. Shoes off at the door. Like,
how about you?
For us, it depended on like the era of and what record we were on and who the driver was. We had one driver who was like, we loved him at first. He was like meticulously clean. And, always just straightened everything up and everything smelled nice. And then he started to get, like, really touchy-feely. Like, he'd be walking, you'd be sitting in the front lounge, and he'd kind of do, like, this to your leg. And it was kind of weird.
Oh, man, that's such a nightmare.
Oh, dude.
What you don't
You're
realize,
stuck with them.
Yeah, like, you've got a band and a crew, and you've built this whole thing. It's like your buddies, this whole crew.
Yeah.
And then there's another guy.
Yeah.
And particularly on those European buses, they sleep on the bus.
They sleep on the bus. Don't slam my door. I've told him this story of like, we had this 900-pound German guy named Frank. One thing he told me, how I was like, man, it was my first European tour, I think. And I was like, I don't have the right power. I need like 115. And he's like, 115 volts, girly power. Or whatever. Anyways, like you were saying, he slept in the bay of the bus, right? So like every time you get a bag out of the bay, it would close, you'd be sleeping, and you would always hear from inside the bus, don't slam my door. And you're like, oh, fucking shut
It's
up,
kind of
bro.
an idiotic system, I think, overall.
It is.
Because you want your bus driver to actually get a good sleep. Right?
Yes.
Because he's got all of your lives in his hands.
and
So you either have to be silent or have a party, but you're kind of fucking yourself if you have a party.
I guess the drives are a little shorter in Europe.
Sometimes,
for the
like,
most part,
so in Europe, they're so strict about the number of hours they're allowed to drive. Like, it's all clocked on their speedometer or whatever. That I remember we were in Brighton, UK. Was this on our tour? Did we play Brighton together?
No, we didn't play Brighton.
You guys went down there.
So we
yeah.
played Brighton, UK, and like we parked the bus, but we were blocking the loading door, so people couldn't get in, and so we needed to move the bus like 6 feet. But because the bus driver had hit his hours, he couldn't move it 6 feet.
Yeah.
We had to go into another door all the way around, like to the front of the venue. It was
Yeah.
crazy, and like it was like a big hole to do. And
We
you're like,
had a German bus driver named, I shit you not, and he listened to Rammstein. His name was Holger Diesel. You couldn't have invented a more.
awesome, dude. That's
He had a
amazing.
ponytail. And then we had a Swedish bus driver named Bjorn. And he loved rollerblading.
How amazing is it when you find a bus driver that you love?
Oh, man.
And then you would do anything for them. And then
not only
sometimes
that, you
get
keep
them
them
again.
You keep them secret.
Yeah, of course.
Like, we're not going to tell you.
We've
who
gotten like the same bus driver, like, a couple tours spread apart, and you're like, yes, George.
We had
It
the
makes a
worst
huge
luck
difference.
with
Like,
driver. We had one guy who was awesome. This guy Harley, who looked like Santa, and he was great. But man, we had this one guy who was a tweaker, like straight up. I mean, like flamboyantly tweaking, he threw a beer bottle at a passing car once because he thought they got too close to the
amazing.
bus. He wouldn't sleep.
That's amazing.
He didn't have teeth, completely toothless.
And so, anywhere between 8 to 12 people's lives are in this guy's
Right,
hand.
exactly, dude.
You know, we'll have to have you guys come back at some point, like when the podcast is, in its maturity. Yeah. And we'll just do a whole podcast about bus driver stories, because we could honestly talk about this forever.
Dude, tour,
Yeah.
man. And that's one of the best things about tour is like you just have lifetimes worth of stories, man, of just doing weird things in weird places.
Max, is there a memorabilia you want to share, maybe about you and Kenny?
Well, I can tie something into Birmingham, but it's at Birmingham, Alabama.
So it's a memorabilia.
It leapt to mind. Our bus burned down in Birmingham, Alabama. Burned like a Duraflame log to ash.
What the fuck? I feel like I would have heard about this on the news. When was this?
Yeah, it certainly made the news in Birmingham. This would have been like 99. We were out with Third Eye Blind.
1900s.
We were playing 5 Points. You guys have probably played, or 5 Points.
That's back in the 90s. I don't think
It's still there.
It's still there. Okay, sorry.
And I was on stage singing Graduate with Third Eye Blind. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that.
Can I graduate?
Oh, yeah.
Can I get my punk ass off the
And
stage?
I walk off the stage, and one of our techs is like, our bus is burning down. And I was like, yeah, our bus is burning down. That's funny. He's like, yeah, our bus is on fire right now. It's burning down. and like, I was like, are you fucking serious? He was like, yes. And so I just remember running out of the club, running around the corner, and seeing this thing just lit up. I mean, just
How
like...
did that happen?
It was an electrical fire.
Jeez. Did people lose all their shit, or you were able to get stuff out of the bays?
I actually had a book of lyrics, just like scratched ideas and stuff like that was stuffed between my mattress in my bunk and the wall. And the edges of it were all black, but the inside was preserved. That was pretty
You
sweet.
still have that book?
No.
I played a guitar.
I was going to say, we should throw that up on the website.
I know,
and we're going
right?
to take bids.
His guitar player, Sweet Pea from Eve 6, also manages fitness, and we wrote a song together the other day, and there's a guitar that I picked up, and he goes, is that the fire guitar? And I'm like, when are you guys talking to the fire guitar? He goes, our bus burned down. That guitar was in there. If you smell it,
smelled like smoke. For like 8 years, it smelled like smoke.
You're like, whoa, dude, it's crazy.
That's crazy.
But it was just, so we wrote, that night we rode on Third Eye Blind's bus, which was super awkward
terrible.
because they were like, the two songwriters in that band were literally like suing each other during that tour. They hated each other's guts, like wouldn't look at each other. One of them was like drinking codeine and just like full of anger, and we're like sleeping in the front. It was just very, very strange.
Sleeping on the floor and stuff, going 20 deep in a bus.
Oh, man, that's got to be one of the weirdest experiences ever, suing someone on the same bus as you.
That you're on tour with. Yeah.
But
you literally wake up,
wait
and
in
open
line
your
for the
curtain,
bathroom,
and
like-
you're next.
you need money to be able to sue, and they're both like, well, I guess we should do this tour. Sue each other, you know what I mean?
And the lawyers you all make the same recommendation.
Yeah, exactly.
If you want, make more money, sue for more
Yeah,
money.
exactly.
Yeah.
You guys should go on this tour. I concur with his attorney.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right, so let's talk about favorite gear.
Ooh.
We usually talk about gear from the studio. I think this week we're going to do something different, just because we've probably been boring our audience with stuff that they don't really know about. But
fucking care.
No,
we
but
can split it up. So you guys, since Kenny, you're an engineer and you guys do production together, you've just moved into a new studio. What's some of your favorite gear, or one piece of your favorite gear
One
right now?
piece?
Yeah, that you're working on.
It's funny because before we started this, we went and checked out our studio, and I've not seen
you were
anyone
just played
geek
off by
out
our
as
music.
geek out as much as Kenny
Somebody
has.
like
with
that actually
Jesse
knows
and
what the
Dan.
stuff is.
He's like, "Oh, you got the burl! Holy
Dude, the burl rig. God, I wish I had a burl rig. I was gonna say favorite piece of gear or most used piece of gear.
Do both.
Okay, so the most used piece of gear is my Kemper. I am so into the Kemper. As a songwriter, it makes so much sense. Instead of like setting up the amp and then getting the mic and echoing the pedal, you just plug in and it works. And then after so many years of using it, my tones are so good. And a lot of people go, where'd you get these tones? I'm like, it's fucking from the Kemper box, man. And
So
But
for
for
our
the audience,
audience,
a
yeah,
Kemper
what
is a
the
digital
Kemper,
modeling
yes.
amplifier, right?
It's a guitar modeling and amplifying amplifier modeler that does a great job, and it'll store up to 2,000 different tones in it. So you can have like an Vox AC30, a Fender Bassman, a Supro amp. You can have all these different ones set. And I've had a few friends use, so it has all the AWOL settings in it from all the records, and then it's got Keith from Atlas Genius borrowed it, and so it's got all his guitar tones in it. So like it's been around, and so I have so many good tones in there. So this Kemper box that I use is one of my favorite, is probably the most used. My favorite piece of gear, quickly, is my Neotech console. It's because it's got a good story. My console used to be Steve Miller's. It was made by Neotech for Steve Miller, and it's called the Prototype 1.
Steve Miller, as in the Steve Miller band.
As in the Steve Miller band, yeah. And it's the only one that's like it because it was a prototype. And my friend Rick Carson, who has a studio in Omaha, he found it somewhere on sale for like $400, and it was 32 channels. He cut that bitch in half, sold 16 of the channels, made several $1,000s, and then just slapped a master section on my 16 and sent it to me for free. And so
that'd be so rad if it was just some guy named Steve Miller.
But no, and so now I have this 16 channel analog console that has like SSL pre's in it, and
we have George Martin's mix his board also.
What's that?
George Martin.
George
R. Martin.
George R. Martin.
Game of Tones.
I remember when you posted that on Instagram for the first time.
Yeah, so excited.
Yeah, you used like the right filter and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
It was pretty sexy.
Dude. I mean, it looks old. It sounds old. It's perfect. And like now we're doing all of our drums through it, and it's just like it's unbelievable.
So has it got an EQ on each channel?
Yeah,
or?
it's got an EQ with a Q scoop on it, and 8 buses and master section. It's got a 1176 built into it as well, and fresh talk back, and it's awesome. It's great. We use it a lot.
Max, you got a favorite piece of gear or even an instrument or anything like that?
Yeah, I definitely don't know from gear at all. I do really like the
Chaotica ball.
Yeah.
So we just got. Have you guys seen the Chaotica ball?
No.
With the K, Chaotica. It's a. For lack of a better way to describe it, it's like a styrofoam ball that goes over the capsule of a microphone and creates an ISO booth. So everybody's always had the U-shaped thing in front of you or whatever. Yeah. This thing that's a ball that goes right over the capsule of the mic, has a pop filter in it that you can pull off. And we record now with like the AC on, people talking.
The door open.
And it's dead
it's crazy. And it's like the vocal sounds more present than it ever has. Yep.
I see. It's like a crazy pop shield.
Yeah, it's called the Chaotica eyeball, man. It's cool. So rad.
Yeah, that's cool.
I mean, that Neumann. Have you seen that Neumann stereo head, the binaural microphone? It's like $10,000. It's ridiculous.
What? Whoa.
Yeah, but it's 2 microphones in a head, which is the right. Like it's the right weight and everything like that. Right. They use it for binaural recording. So when you listen back on headphones, you're in the room. You know, you're back in the room. It's like a crazy. Who's that? There's some guy who uses it as his overhead. He's got this head looking over his drums.
I've seen that. Yeah. I have seen that.
It's a Neumann thing.
I was going to say, and it's actually been around for a little while, right? Yeah, okay. I've seen that stupid thing.
Nobody has them because they're $10,000.
Right, I think so. And it's so stupid looking, but it's so stupid.
Oh my God. You've got like a crash test dummy in your
we were talking about that because we were looking down our rack of gear.
Oh, I have seen that. That's cool.
The Avalons and how much like fashion plays into even this high-end gear that ultimately it needs to be utilitarian entirely. Like if it doesn't sound good, what the fuck is the point of it?
Yeah.
But if it's got the right color on the face,
fashion is so interesting too. In like, the thing that I think of is like this, like Phil Collins kind of resurgence, like in bands like TV on the Radio. They're like trying to capture similar sounds and aesthetics, right. And how he was the most mocked critically, like when he was making those records, guy of all time, and now it's like that's come around to
people want that
being sort of the
he was
taste
mocked in
du jour.
Every single way though.
What's that?
Phil Collins was mocked not just in those ways. He was mocked like for the little microphone that he wore, for how he set up his drum kit,
for
like
being
his haircut,
short and bald.
Dude, you look at him back then.
There's a chapter in American Psycho just lambasting Phil Collins.
Dude, when you look at pictures of Phil Collins from the 80s when he was still Philip Collins, his outfits were so sick. He was so dope looking, dude. I'm like, Phil's
always been incredible.
I know,
it's like
that's the thing. Phil's been sick.
Well, and now
That's
he's
the
like
funny
Brooklyn
thing about
cool.
fashion, right? There's fashion is a little bubble that people live in where everybody in the 80s thought that the previous generations were silly.
Of course.
Right.
So we're currently in the 80s, right?
Right. Yeah,
But
exactly.
nobody's able to perceive
Yeah.
what's
Right.
that.
So you're saying in 2062 they're going to be like, dude, the fashion of 2018 was
Absolutely,
that was
it's
the
a law
shit.
of nature that
Exactly, yeah.
people ridicule what
Mid-century modern, baby.
I think there are going to be some like objectively shit periods that everyone just forever agrees were dumb.
And there
I don't know
are
about
some
that.
objectively,
2000s.
there are some objectively cool too. Like I don't know if like the Pony Boy, greaser thing was ever like laughably funny. Like that
Right,
that always
yeah.
maintained a certain
Yeah, there
You
have
know?
been some that do seem to have stood out.
perennially kind of cool.
Yeah.
I think that they're closer to probably what is, if they're natural aesthetics, if they
Right.
exist. Of course,
Right.
natural aesthetics exist.
Of not doing too much.
Right, yeah. There's a sense of aesthetics that's developed evolutionarily, maybe,
Yeah.
who knows,
Yeah.
over millennia and over millions of years, and we have these
That has
feelings.
like
Yeah.
an honesty to it or
Right,
something.
yeah. Well, even if it's not honest, it's in nature. So if the dishonest thing you're creating aligns with that nature, then it's not going to go out of style as quickly.
But
Right.
do Birds of Paradise, I guess theirs is just a slower time scale, but there's fashion in like Birds of Paradise.
Cool birds, yeah.
Do you guys
cool birds.
you guys realize that we have done a seamless transition into deep thoughts? I'm very impressed.
But we missed out on our important piece of gear, though. No, it's not important. But this is important to us, and particularly to Jesse, Mr. Curry and Eggs. We all got these knives. I don't even know what they're called. Zanmai Pro Gyoto Chef Knife. It's a Japanese steel.
No, mine's a Makusta.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I got-
Makusta is the manufacturer. It's the Zanmai Pro model.
Yeah, you guys last year for Christmas, or like before Christmas, Danny was at my house, and I was making dinner. I was like, I've been spending too much money on stuff and on gear, on family life, and I was like, one of these days, like maybe we get a big tour or something, I'm going to buy some fucking great knives. And he's like, and then that Christmas I show up and the guy's got me a set of awesome knives, and Danny's and his justification was like, a knife is like the most, the amount I cook, especially, it's like the most. It's not a luxury. You need this knife.
Yeah. We have those ceramic knives at our house too, man. There's some good. I live with my wife and her sister is like some gourmet caterer who like cooks Bob Dylan's food. So she's got like every kitchen utensil and every knife and all the foods from the farmer's market, and I eat like a fucking king. And it's amazing, dude. It's so rad. She's like, I made these little salmon croquettes. Do you want one? I'm like, okay, I want a salmon croquette.
When you go to someone's house and they don't have a good set of knives, and you see them cutting with like a blunt blade, which is actually way more dangerous.
Right.
And you're just like, how do you do this on a daily basis? Because you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a good knife.
Yeah,
you
it's
spend like
vicariously
$40 to
frustrating.
get a really good knife.
How about those sushi knives, dude? You see when you're sitting at the bar and you see those dudes, and they wave it over the fish and it just slices in its own. God, those things are dangerous.
Yeah. I think instead of we usually do the segment 6, which is what it's like to be in a band.
Before we
with
go on,
brothers.
there's that. We got this from the knife shop in Phoenix. There's also one in Portland, and it's just they only sell knives, and they've got like walls of Japanese knives,
called
and the people in there are really
Phoenix Knife
weird.
Shop?
Yeah, the Phoenix Knife Shop.
The most dangerous place to be in a tornado.
In fact, I was when we were
It turned into sushi. Yeah.
when we were buying Jesse's knives for that Christmas there. Chris Bianco came in. So if you're in Phoenix, you know who Chris Bianco is. He's has a pizza restaurant there called Pizzeria Bianco that is like every year it's ranked one of the top pizza restaurants in the country. Does Neapolitan style pizza. So I was like, felt very just. I was like, I'm getting my knives here. One of the greatest chefs in America. I must be.
Exactly. Which is going to make me one of the greatest chefs.
Right.
Exactly.
Done.
I
Purchased.
mean, I only make mac and cheese, and I've never used this knife, but nevertheless, it looks nice on the wall. Yeah.
So sorry, you were going to say now on the brothers.
I was going to say maybe we skipped that because there was something we talked about off air, which might be by the time this podcast comes out, it might be relevant. You're going in on a new business adventure.
Yes, I
am. An adventure.
A can adventure.
Both, certainly.
Can adventure, yes. I have a business that is starting mid-January that's called Cameo Collective, and it's going to be a cannabis delivery service throughout Los Angeles County and hopefully one day Ventura County and all that kind of good stuff. And So we're one of my best friends that I've known since I was 4 years old. Like one of those friends that you don't remember not knowing. You know, he was always the Puerto Rican drug dealer of my town, Orlando. You know, where everybody he was just that guy that all the parents were worried about. Now he's the guy that everybody wants to invest in because he's run a farm in Humboldt County, 8 farms in Humboldt County for like the past decade, and like. The biggest lawyers, the biggest legislators in Florida all want a piece of his thing, yada, yada, yada. So, like, it's funny that he went from that to that. Mm-hmm. But with all the new weed laws and lax on the laws, I guess there's so much growing now that the growers are suffering because all the dispensaries are haggling the prices and lowballing all the growers and stuff. So he wanted to get out of the grow scene and go into the retail scene. And I said, hey, I know people who smoke weed. I smoke weed. All my friends smoke weed. I work in the music industry. I know Los Angeles. We should do this thing together. And so we ended up over the last almost like 8 months talking every day, planning, doing this whole thing, trying to get licenses and permits and all this different stuff. We've got it all set. We've got it all good to go.
And you've got a pilot's license.
And I have a pilot's license. Right. I have a cannabis license. I have a grow license. I have all these licenses. And I'm doing all these things. And it's going to be sick. And call your buddy Kenny. You know, what do you need?
Wait, so that's the thing that exists. Like, it's crazy for people. Like, we had a friend from South Africa come out and visit recently. And we were in Denver. And we went into a dispensary. And, like, his eyeballs, it was just amazing. They smoke a lot of weed in South Africa. In fact, like, some of the great strains have come from South Africa. But it was just blowing his mind. It's crazy to see how mainstream this culture has become. Like, already in L.A., you can get weed delivered to your house.
In, like, Denver, in these, like, recreational places. Because, like, recreational is going to be where the money is, right? So, I mean, you're talking iPad menus in the wall. And, like, all these different loud, like... They're treating it like it's always been 420 butthead long hair stoner, right? Now they're starting to do it in a classy way because really, like, at least in Los Angeles, like, almost everybody smokes weed no matter what age you are. And so, like, people with money, all these directors and producers and CEOs and entrepreneurs, they would rather pay a higher price.
The stereotype is already...
That's the thing. So it does exist that there are classier places, but we are trying to do only like the classier stuff, like no butthead bullshit, no weed leaf 420 this or that. We have strains because my friend is the farmer from up north. He can get the strains that nobody can find here. So we're gonna have like the higher quality, the nicer stuff, slightly more expensive. We will go to you with our nice
cute packaging too.
Good packaging, like just trying to take away from like some random dude throwing you a white bag stapled. You know.
So are you planning on opening up actual retail stores, or is it all
eventually?
Right
so
now?
like the goal that we wanted was to have a dispensary, but it's over $1 million to get it started, and we will do that. So we figured the best way to start that is get the delivery going, and over the next year start building out the retail. Ventura County, where I live in Thousand Oaks, doesn't allow anything cannabis yet, but they will. Everybody will. Every single place around here will. Like eventually, it's just going to happen. So, building the business now. That way, when Ventura becomes available, we can kind of slip into that.
And it has been defetishized. That's what especially in California. It's still not in Denver. I think they still like love the culture.
Yeah.
But here, it's basically it is such a normal aspect of life that people don't obsess over it, and that's a normal psychology that needs to develop.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Like you don't want to do. I got to call my weed guy. You're like, no, dude. There's this brand that I get, this company that I use that has like the best stuff with the best jars, and it's all
no
nice.
white dreads.
But clearly, synthetic THC is going to be better. I mean, surely that's going to
see. Therein lies one of our biggest issues is that with legalization comes the money bags. The people, it's going to be.
I think this might be the one industry where they resist it on a large scale. So your friend up in Humboldt County, is it outdoor farms mostly?
Indoor, outdoor, and depot, all of the above.
Okay, I think it's the one industry is like where food agriculture went one way in the 50s when chemical pesticides and chemical fertilizer came about, and only now it started to come back to like this organic. You can buy heirloom tomatoes. You can buy this.
Well, now that we're learning what all those bullshit stuff did to our bodies and did to our parents' bodies over all those years. Hopefully that it will be.
Yeah, I think most people who smoke weed or ingest weed in any way unless they're purely trying to get fucked up, they're not going to be interested in that. They're going to actually be interested in the fact that this farm grows it in soil. Right. It's grown and they're hybridizing varieties that are not
what we want to bring is that all the dispensaries.
But I've been down a rabbit hole on Instagram of like dabbers.
Yeah.
Where it's just people just want to, like, how
right,
high
those are
can I
people
get?
sucking butane into their faces, right?
So
it's
gonna,
terrible.
That'll always exist, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
I think on a large scale, I think this industry will be able to resist it because there's going to be such a market for actually, pure organic.
Well, when you think about
grown weed.
because when you think about the CBD market, right? Because there's obviously two. There's the THC market and there's the CBD market. In CBD, you're talking about a body rub balm that is for achy joints. It's like none of that will want to be, fake in any way and that kind of stuff. And that's also what we're trying to get into big, like bath bombs and lotions and potions and topical creams. And like I just got this you can hear my nose now. I use this weed balm that I put on my sinuses and it opens it right up. And it's just CBD. It's no THC, no psychoactive materials in it. And so like the market's insane, and like what the future holds for the cannabis industry.
It's in its infancy right now.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, who knows? It's just amazing to see, and to be in on it now is an amazing thing. And to really start to get into the industry over the last 6 months and understand like what these farmers go through. I mean, they're up at 4 a.m. pulling tarps and digging holes in 30,000 gallon tanks of water. And it's like, these aren't like just like drug dealers with Ziploc baggies, man. These are farmers. These are botanists who have perfected the art of growing beautiful, good smelling, plants and all that stuff.
I think living where we do, you get into this bubble where you just assume that everybody's on board with this because it's kind of so ridiculous to not be.
Right.
There's still a large part of the country that, it's like not going to be on board with this.
Totally.
I think if you're on the fence about this, or if we have any listeners of that nature, just go on YouTube and look at instances like where kids have epilepsy,
right,
and they use a cannabis oil on. You put like a drop on there, they heal, and their seizures stop.
Parkinson's. There's that video going around of the guy who has Parkinson's for like 40 years and uncontrollable, and within like 3 minutes of taking a tincture, which is a little drop of CBD on the tongue, he was sitting up straight and was fine, not shaking.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's weird that it actually still has to be a discussion. Like,
right,
you can have all the rationalizations, you can point to,
but let alone
the fact that we have to even discuss. It's like it's not a discussion.
It's a fucking Schedule 1 drug. It's like as illegal as heroin. It's like, but yet I can walk into any urgent care and probably get a prescription for almost anything that I want.
Yeah, I had my wisdom teeth removed and they gave me Percocet.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's just like that.
I'm putting it in my zombie apocalypse bag along with animal antibiotics.
How many football players have said they'd rather smoke weed than take OxyContin for their injuries?
It's almost laughable because it becomes like almost like talking points.
Yeah.
These things are so familiar.
Yeah.
These ideas that you feel like eventually like am I a political campaign running a slogan because this shit is so obvious. I can't believe it's But it's a 300 million person giant of a country, and not steering a ship takes forever. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
we'll
with a breadth of cultural differences and awareness differences in education. Yeah.
But hey, your buddy Kenny Carkeet, Cameo Collective, January 15th.
You sound like a pilot.
You guys can find me at Kenny Carkeet on all my social media, and
you're going to put the coordinates right, and you're going to drop them out of your plane. That's how they'll get their delivery.
Drone delivery.
So, you mentioned earlier in the pod, we've done quite a lot of deep thoughts already. I feel like so we can maybe make this section
done well, man. It's not bad.
Shortish. But you mentioned your yoga teacher saying if you do a headstand on the wrong part of your head, you'll go insane, and it seems like a kind of a funny statement. But Danny, what is that study where they've been able to isolate the part of the brain that controls morality with the use of magnets? Yeah. So they've done studies and tests where you take a certain kind of magnet, you place it near a part of the brain, and the morality center of the human being becomes disabled. So you ask them a question, like a picture of a dog, like, should we kill this dog? They can't answer. They don't know the answer.
It's not that they became immoral. I can't remember the details of the study, but they put a huge electromag. It took a lot, like of and they were able to not make them immoral, but almost amoral, like to decouple their sense of morality. And
so that they were confused by the question?
They weren't even, almost like they didn't have an opinion. The examples they used were, your friend is you've crossed a bridge, your friend is crossing the bridge, and you know the bridge will fail. Do you tell them not to cross? And their answers were more like, I don't know. It was kind of right. They're not like they didn't have an opinion.
Well, it's funny when you first told me about this story. immediate thought was, oh, the military is going to be all over this shit. Because if you could have a helmet that disables the morality center of a soldier, that's going to be
that's the super drug for
but you want it to work when they're not wearing the helmet, so that you have to go through the lung practice.
I'm moving to Mars, man.
In a way, it's kind of zen.
Non-attachment.
Right. That is an interesting idea, is that there's an assumption that morality is universal.
Yeah.
So if you could should you have premarital sex?
Right.
That, for some people, that's a moral question.
Right.
And if they put one of these helmets on, maybe they'd they'd be free from that.
Well, I just
put this helmet on, will you?
I just listened to this. Are you guys familiar with Sam Harris? Did you hear the one on the guy who believes that it's profoundly unethical to he's not he's not a what is it, fatalist or not fatalist?
He's an anti-natalist.
Anti-natalist, right?
I had to turn it off.
Yeah,
actually.
I listened to the whole thing, but going back to the idea that morality's universal, I mean, it just ain't. I mean,
of course
like,
not,
yeah. So to that guy, not saving his friend from crossing the bridge. Well, I guess he's an anti-natalist, so he's not a. He's not to kill people. He's not a mortalist or whatever.
He was coming up with all sorts of ideas that.
Yeah, it also sounded like in the.
Sounds like his parents didn't love him.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
like
he neatly evaded that question about his own mental state in the beginning, like when Sam was asking.
Yeah, that was one of the more difficult ones to listen to. But I wanted to go back. Do you remember why? Was there any more explanation? I don't know if I was there for that talk.
No, that's what I love about Noah.
Said not to, because I have an idea of why he might mean that. But did he elaborate on it?
No, and I've seen pictures of Patabi Joyce doing it, and he's of course doing it the opposite, not the opposite way, but not the way Noah says to do it.
Right.
He's like straight right in the center of his head, so I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think with a person like that who, as a person who's done yoga thrice in my life, but do you think a teacher like that,
part of his goal is to make sure that knowledge is comes from yourself? It's not, you can't give people knowledge. We talked about this with the experience of, the pitfalls of success or alcohol, drugs. Nobody could give you that, right? You had to do it on your own. So does it apply to other things? And is throwing a red herring or is throwing advice in and then not explaining it almost a methodology of forcing a person to learn for themselves and to
I think
trust
it
their
could
own
be. I don't have Noah totally figured out, and I love him, and I love that conviction because it's. I don't know. I don't feel like. It's not. Somehow it's. I don't know.
It's not arrogance.
It's not arrogance, and it's right. He's talking about his own truth. He's definitely said some things, some even crazier things before.
Is it perhaps that it's got to do with the level of the students? Like you can imagine certain teachers saying, like, as a hard and fast rule, do not do this. Not necessarily for everyone, but for you at your level, this is not. You're not ready for this, or it needs to be done under correct instruction.
Well, it's also 99% practice, 1% theory, or whatever. Yeah. With Ashtanga Mysore, it's not, and there are a lot of teachers who don't do this at all, and it's really obnoxious when you're in a class and a teacher is like constantly adjusting you and moving you around. Yeah. I think the philosophy is kind of just to do it and. Yeah, I think it is a lot
what Danny said, because I've had that experience too where I've asked him questions or I've overheard someone else asking him a question about a way to do something.
Yeah.
And he's not dismissive, but it is an attitude of like, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
He gives you a little bit of guidance.
Yeah.
Or if you're having pain somewhere.
Yeah.
And he'll say, it's pretty natural. You'll have pain there. And it is almost like you can't learn it properly. You can't understand it until you experience it. I've had a number of experiences where like I hurt my back or I've hurt a hip or my knees done something, and it's almost always, and this is going to sound so totally cliche, but it's always because my ego is telling me that I can do this, that person can do it, someone else can do it, I can do this, and then I push too hard
completely,
or I don't listen to the actual your body saying you can't actually do this.
No, and it's like
you're stuck in it. So he's I think he's encouraging you to like figure that out, because that in itself is an experience that you can only learn, that and understand that. And then I think the idea with at least what I've experienced with the headstand is that it's always done at the end of the practice, which just blows my mind that some of the other practices tell you, or they include headstands like in the beginning
Yeah, it
of a
sounds
practice or in
insane.
the middle or something. It's like it's always supposed
Absurd.
to be done, at the end. Supposedly you're supposed to be able to hold it for like 3 hours where you're not actually putting any pressure on your head. It's all like on your arms.
So maybe that's what it's getting to. So maybe that's, if you're here, you're out of necessity putting more in your elbows and your fists than you are your head.
I think you're developing the strength in your arms to be able to hold yourself off your head, because if you've ever done yoga and there's the finishing sequence, which is very systematic and like rigid, and at least in Ashtanga, it's a series of moves at the end that are done after every series. You finish a certain way with headstand and then relaxing, and you're slowing down your breath. If you've ever not done that, like if you've ever rushed through it and you get up or you lift your head too early from a headstand,
you feel very weird.
Yeah, it feels very strange. You end up the whole day feeling agitated.
Yep.
Every little thing can, get on your nerves. And the idea is that you've just vibrated and warmed up your nervous system.
Yeah.
And it has to be cooled down, and it has to be relaxed. And if you
Same with
come
not
out of
doing
that,
Shavasana. Yeah.
That's the one I know.
That's the
You guys
best
are weird,
one.
man. Cameo Collective.
So if you ever see that, it can be a new thing. When people are stupid, you say where you dropped on your head as a kid.
Yeah.
If you ever see yoga people that are just insane, you'd be like, have you been doing handstands or headstands the wrong way?
Well, and there are certainly some personalities like that, where you wonder.
Yeah.
But I've done the
guy
same
is
thing with
maniacal.
Marchasana D, where I've like forced it in there, not been breathing, and like heard the loudest pop.
Yeah.
And my knee was screwed up for like a year.
Yeah, I think that all comes from like I can fucking do this.
I can do this. Yeah.
So it's probably a good place to end this, so we can get to talking about our.
Let's do the Jack Handy just briefly. We'll do Jack.
Oh
Handy.
yeah, sorry, I completely forgot about that.
Okay, what? Just
So the reason we call this section Deep Thoughts is, if you're not aware of it, it's from like SNL. Jack Handy's Deep Thoughts.
Our boy Franken.
He used to read
We
those.
didn't get to
No.
Weinstein, but
Wait, Al Franken read those?
Oh, it's not.
No, he did. He did the one where he's like,
Oh,
"People like
I'm
me,"
good
and
enough, and
This is Jack Handy. It's almost it's a comical take on cones. A bit. It's like
Okay.
I don't know. You've probably heard of cones out there. It's the
KOAN.
Yeah, KOAN. They're Buddhist thought nuggets that are meant to create contradiction in your mind. What's the sound of one hand clapping? What was your face before you were born, and so on. That kind of idea to create an immediate
One
contradiction.
I
in
came
your mind.
across today that I hadn't heard before is, if you meet the Buddha, kill him.
This is not Jack Handy. That's a and so
it.
they're not fully cones, but some of them have that direct kind of.
So just read a
contradiction.
couple.
Yeah,
So I guess one of the Jack Handy ones is, I can picture in my mind a world without war, a world without hate, and I can picture us attacking that world because they'd never expect it. So I guess the reason we brought up in Deep Thoughts is because that idea of humor and the absolute contradictions appears to be so connected.
Yeah.
That there's no other reaction you can have to either Jack Handy's or to some of these more serious cones than other than your brain just going like boop.
Right.
Yeah, right.
You're like, what?
So your body, perhaps that's the mechanism of laughter, is your body just saying like, I don't understand.
Yeah.
It's funny that pirates were always going around searching for treasure, and they never realized that the real treasure was the fun memories they were creating.
That's great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
All right, so we'll throw up a couple of these quotes from Jack Handy, so you guys know why we chose to name our section Deep Thoughts.
And we'll end it there, so we can get to talking with Kenny about our escaping LA scenario.
Oh, yeah.
And,
real quickly, one last thing. Real quickly, because we were all here. SpaceX rocket launch. UFO or spaceship?
You know what? I was a full on SpaceX guy.
Yeah.
It was, and then I saw those pictures from one from Russia and one the
An
formations
old
they were making. Right? Yeah. And I instantly believe the conspiracy because that's what I do. I don't fucking challenge conspiracies in my own mind. It's a much healthier way to live. I just believe them.
Here's the thing. Here's what I've told everybody because people are freaking out on me about it. And sometimes I wear the tinfoil hat, but I grew up in Florida on the Space Coast. I went to Satellite High School. My bank was the Space Coast Credit Union. Like, I lived right next to Cape Canaveral, where there's rocket launches several times a year. I grew up watching shuttles. Probably seen over 100 in my life. Never, ever seen anything like that.
But to assume that this technology would look anything like the ones from whatever's going on in 1988.
And I agree. And I agree. Well, they still launch rockets every year. Many rockets. No more shuttles, but many rockets. And they all go straight up. Even if they curve a little bit. What I saw above LA, they said was supposed to be 338 miles above the Earth. Call that bullshit. Never seen a rocket launch horizontally over the thing. I'm just saying.
Did you actually see it from where you were at?
Yeah. I was driving and I stopped and I got out of the car and saw it. Here's the other crazy thing was the plume of smoke that was right above me looked like I could grab it. Well after the launch, like 20 minutes after the launch, this plume of smoke in the dark of night was completely illuminated. Just many things. And listen, they've been telling us for 60 years that they're weather balloons, and everybody's like, that's bullshit. They're not weather balloons. Now they're like, it's SpaceX. They're like, oh, well, it's
Right. Well,
I'm not saying it's
Well, have
not,
you ever
I'm
seen
just
Elon
saying-
Musk's presentation of any of his cars when he talks?
Yeah.
There's a good chance he's an actual alien.
Right, yeah, totally. And listen, like I said before, I'm not saying it's not SpaceX. I'm just saying some shit was fucking interesting about that.
The nature of conspiracy obviously is that you don't have the truth, right? Or so there are perpetual problems, and you can like go. I've been like down so many 4 a.m. rabbit holes,
Yeah, of course.
and just fucking going to the deep dark corners of the web trying to.
And sometimes they're true, man.
But let's
Of course. Conspire. It just means to breathe together. Right?
Yeah,
That's the nature of the word. It means conspire, to breathe. Anyway, the most remarkable thing to me about this whole thing is that major news publications and the government took UFOs seriously for the first time ever. Yeah. And nobody fucking gave a shit.
Yep.
And there's billionaires like the Bigelow guy saying that could be just a way to get money from Harry Reid or whatever, but it's fucking crazy. That's
crazy.
There's some interesting shit going on. I'm just saying. How about there's a video that some people were posting about a SpaceX rocket that got blown up by something in the sky that they don't know what blew it up via a projectile. Some weird shit. And then they had released the video footage of the naval aviators from their cameras on their plane having the weird UFOs, and those pilots being like,
what the hell
nothing
is it?
flies like that. There's nothing like that.
Yeah, that was.
And then
that
they
was
should have.
pretty wild.
I'm not saying it's not SpaceX. I'm just saying. I'm just
I'll say it
saying.
for
People
you.
have been calling their bullshit for 50 years, and now all of a sudden they're like, no, it's SpaceX.
I'll say it for you, Kenny. There's going to come a point where the mainstream thought says it is more likely that there are aliens than not.
Right.
I think that's currently
And
the case.
we're on the precipice, and I think we're at the point with we're so stuck in imbibing social media that like no one even gives a shit. Okay, aliens, cool. I don't care. I'm gonna go back to my Snapchat. You know, it's like,
That was for me the most mind-blowing part is that you've got senators and other people talking like they're legitimately investigating UFOs, which of course is not. You can't conflate that with aliens. UFOs unidentified, obviously, but. Nevertheless, they're legitimately interested in it, and people who would have ridiculed it in the past.
Well, this is the New York Times, not the National Enquirer.
How about this?
I mean, that
If there's going to be a
itself.
meteor shower, like one meteor every hour, a month from now, it's on the fucking calendar. It's on Facebook. It's on all this shit.
Yeah.
Ain't nobody. Yes, we did research, and I saw a couple posts saying that a rocket was going to launch. But if you're going to have one of the most spectacular sky visuals in the history of mankind, and we were like, oh no, that was just us the other day. I'm just saying.
If I'll tell you this much, if I were Elon Musk and I was going to do that, I would do exactly that because that's hilarious.
He's getting
Not everybody's freaking out about it. You know what I mean? Like me, but anyways,
Good marketing.
I mean, that's my all. Whenever you have these fantasy lands where you're a billionaire and what you would do, all the shit I always come up with is stupid pranks on a massive scale. It would be like that's the most fun thing you could do with money.
Because people are so sure about it, and I keep saying that I'm not sure because I want the people on the other side because they're like, no, it's fucking SpaceX, blah blah blah. I'm like, all right, listen,
they hold your feet to the fire like you
work at
have to prove it.
SpaceX,
If I was
and
a
you launch that
billionaire-
fucking rocket, you don't know either, motherfucker. You ain't seen a rocket. You looked up in the sky, like, nope. That's SpaceX.
I don't know how anything works. I don't know how anything works, but I got made fun of universally in this family because I tried to build a guitar once, and it was so shit. And I realized, okay, engineering is not my forte. And so for me, that's why I'm so open to conspiracies because I cannot disprove
There's
them.
nothing wrong with that.
Me
With
personally.
asking questions.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
and it's more fun. Just
We
join.
all know that
those
shit's
of you in
made
the
up that we
audience
read all the
who
time.
are skeptical
Everybody
of
knows that.
conspiracy, you're
Even-
leading a lifeless life. Join the
Yeah.
conspiracy side. Is much more fun.
Dude.
You get to believe whatever you want.
Even realists believe that like everything you read isn't true. Even like full realists think that. So it's like
Yeah, sure.
so while I'm just saying.
Well, I'm an antinatalist, so
Yeah, so and on that note, fellas,
next podcast will be bus driver stories
Yes.
and conspiracy theories. And
No,
Yes.
I
that's
think
all
aliens
we'll
will be
talk
out
about.
by then. Then we'll talk
See, we
about
got this.
do you have that crazy spaceship driver, dude? I had the worst spaceship driver.
So before we go, we've had fitness on the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us where we can find you guys online.
you
and all
can
that.
find us at fitnesswastaken.com, and all of our socials are at fitnesswastaken on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Everything in our whole world is one word: fitness was taken.
Cool. We'll throw links
Awesome.
up on
Throw
the
a bunch of
website.
links up.
Thank you, guys. Thank you
Thanks for having
coming.
us, guys. This is
Thanks so
awesome.
I
much,
think
guys.
if I look at the counter, this is our longest podcast yet, and it's an
Yes.
indication of how fun it's
That's
been.
exactly.
so
I told you.
All right. Make
Thanks,
sure
guys.
you head to congress.com/podcast to follow along with today's episode and hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google, wherever you're listening. See ya.